She wore a silver dress that cost more than most cars, and underneath it, she was counting bruises. Derek Hale's hand rested on the small of her back like a loaded gun. One wrong smile, one wrong word, and she'd pay for it before the valet even pulled the car around. Then a stranger across the ballroom looked at her, really looked, and Lena Marlowe knew, with a terror that tasted like copper, that her life was about to split in half. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments, hit that like button, stay to the end, because what Victor Salvatore does next stops a room of 300 people cold. The Peninsula Hotel on East Superior had been built for nights like this one. Marble the color of bone, chandeliers dripping crystal that caught the light and broke it into 1,000 pieces, a string quartet in the corner playing something Vivaldi wrote 3 centuries ago for men who looked exactly like the ones filling the room now. Chicago in late October had a particular bite to it, the kind that came off the lake and slipped through expensive coats like it had a grudge. But inside the ballroom, the air was warm and thick with perfume, and the low murmur of money doing what money does at these things, pretending to be something nobler than itself. Lena Marlowe stood 3 steps inside the entrance and tried to remember how to breathe. The dress was a problem. Derek had picked it out that afternoon, held it up in front of her in the closet of their Gold Coast penthouse, and said, "Wear this one, the silver. The gray one makes you look tired." He'd said it the way a man might mention the weather, and she'd nodded because nodding was safer than speaking. The silver dress had a slit up the thigh and a back that scooped down almost to her tailbone, and she'd known the moment she saw it that he wanted her on display tonight. A trophy polished for the benefit of men he needed to impress. That was fine. She could do that. She'd been doing it for 2 years. The problem was the bruise. It sat on her left shoulder blade, green at the edges and still purple in the center, and the scoop back of the dress showed it off like a signature. She'd tried concealer. She'd tried the heavier foundation the makeup artist on Oak Street kept in her bottom drawer for clients who didn't want to answer questions. It helped. It didn't fix it. In the right light, at the right angle, anyone who was paying attention would see it. Nobody was paying attention. That was the thing about rooms like this. Everyone was too busy watching themselves being watched. "Smile, baby." Derek's voice was at her ear, warm and low and absolutely charming to anyone listening. His hand slid from her waist to the small of her back and pressed, just enough. "You look like you're at a funeral." "Sorry." Her voice came out fine. She'd practiced. "Don't be sorry. Be here. This is a big night for me." "I know." He kissed the side of her temple. To the room it looked tender. His lips pressed just above her ear and his other hand came up to cradle her jaw, and anyone watching would have seen a man in love with his beautiful wife. His thumb, though. His thumb sat on the hinge of her jaw with a specific kind of pressure, and she knew what it meant. It meant behave. It meant I'm watching. It meant we'll talk about this later if you don't fix your face. She smiled. He let her go. "Derek, there you are, you son of a bitch." A man Lena didn't know came barreling through the crowd, red-faced and laughing, with a glass of something brown in his hand. Derek's face transformed in the half-second before the man arrived. Suddenly he was all teeth and warmth, clapping the guy on the shoulder, laughing at a joke that hadn't been told yet. He was good at that. He'd always been good at that. The first 6 months she'd known him, she'd thought the charm was who he actually was. By the time she'd figured out the truth, she'd already moved into his apartment, already given up the lease on her studio in Lincoln Park, already stopped returning her sister's calls because he didn't like how Maya looked at him. "Lena, honey, this is Tom Brennan." Tom, my wife, Lena. She wasn't his wife. They weren't married. He'd started calling her that about a year in front of other people, and she'd stopped correcting him because correcting him wasn't worth what correcting him cost. Tom Brennan's eyes did a slow, openly appreciative drag from her face down to her heels and back up, and he took her hand and held it a beat too long. "Pleasure," he said. His breath was bourbon. "Derek, you lucky bastard. Where'd you find her?" "Art gallery," Derek said. "She was working the front desk. I walked in for a painting and walked out with her." Tom Brennan laughed like this was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. Lena smiled because she'd been smiling through that story for 2 years. She hadn't been working the front desk. She'd been running the gallery. She'd curated 3 of the shows they had up that spring. She'd had a master's from the Art Institute and a reputation starting to build and an apartment she loved, and a sister who called her every Sunday. Derek had walked in on a Tuesday in April and bought a $12,000 oil painting without haggling, and he'd asked her to dinner, and she'd said no. 3 times she'd said no. On the 4th time, he had sent flowers to the gallery so big the delivery guy needed a cart, with a card that said, "Let me apologize in person," and she'd thought, what's the harm? She'd thought he was persistent. She'd thought he was charming. She'd thought a lot of things. "I'm going to get a drink," she said. "Derek, do you want anything?" "Club soda. I'm working tonight." She nodded and stepped away from the 2 men before Tom Brennan could say something else that made her skin crawl. The bar was across the ballroom, on the far wall, and she walked to it carefully because the heels Derek had also picked out were higher than she was used to, and the marble floor was unforgiving. She kept her face composed. She'd gotten good at that too. A woman walking alone across a ballroom in a silver dress with her chin up and her mouth arranged into something approximating pleasant. Nobody looked at her and saw anything other than what they expected to see. Except it turned out, one person did. She felt him before she saw him. It was a strange thing, and later she'd try to explain it to herself and not be able to. It was the back of her neck, the specific feeling of being looked at, the way a deer in a yard knows a second before the dog comes around the corner. She turned her head halfway to the bar, and her eyes went across the room like they were being pulled by a wire, and there he was. He was standing by the tall windows that looked out over Michigan Avenue, alone, holding a glass of something clear. Dark suit, black tie, no jewelry, black hair cut short. He wasn't the biggest man in the room, wasn't even close, but there was a quality about the way he occupied the space around him that made the people near him seem to exist at a slight remove, like he was standing in a pocket of air that belonged to him alone. 2 men in similar dark suits stood maybe 10 feet behind him, not quite looking at him, not quite looking away. And she understood in some back compartment of her brain that those men were his. His eyes were on her, not on her dress, not on her body, on her face. She'd been looked at by a lot of men in the 2 years she'd been with Derek. She'd gotten very good at reading a look. Most men, when they looked at a woman in a silver dress at a gala, the look was about inventory. What she was wearing, how she was wearing it, what they could or couldn't have. This man's look wasn't that. This man's look was the kind of look a surgeon gives an X-ray. He was reading her, reading the tension in her shoulders, the way she was holding her arm a little too close to her side to keep the slit of the dress from opening, the angle of her jaw where Derek's thumb had been. She looked away first. She had to. Her heart was doing something strange in her chest. "What can I get you?" The bartender was a young woman with a neat bun and a sympathetic mouth. "A glass of the Cabernet," Lena said, "and a club soda with lime." Coming up, Lena put both hands on the edge of the bar and stared at the wood grain and counted in her head. 4 in. Hold 7. 8 out. It was a thing her sister Maya had taught her years ago when she used to have panic attacks before job interviews. 4. Hold 7. 8 out. Her pulse slowed. Her hands stopped trembling. She did not look back across the room. She could feel him still looking. "Here you go." The bartender set the drinks down. "You okay, hun?" Lena looked up. The bartender's face was careful. It was the kind of careful a woman's face got when she'd seen a lot of things from behind a lot of bars, and she was offering an opening without making a thing out of it. "I'm fine," Lena said. "Thank you." "Okay." The bartender didn't move away. "You just let me know if you need anything." "I will." Lena took the drinks and walked back toward Derek, and she could feel the man by the window tracking her across the room like a compass needle tracks north. Derek was laughing at something Tom Brennan had said. He took the club soda without looking at her and slid his arm around her waist again and kept talking. Something about zoning, something about a commission, something about a man named Alderman Kowalski, who was apparently going to be a problem but could be handled. Lena sipped her wine and nodded when it seemed like she should nod and let her eyes move around the room. She didn't mean to find the man by the window again. Her eyes did it on their own. He wasn't by the window anymore. He'd moved. He was in conversation with a gray-haired man she thought she recognized from the business section of the Tribune. Some kind of banker or former senator, she couldn't remember which. The 2 dark-suited men had moved with him. He nodded at something the gray-haired man said something back that made the gray-haired man laugh, and then his eyes lifted over the man's shoulder and found her again across the room. This time, she didn't look away. It was maybe 2 seconds. It felt longer. He didn't smile. She didn't smile. Something passed between them that she didn't have words for, and then Derek's hand tightened on her hip, and she flinched and looked down at her wine. "Who's that?" She glanced up. "Who?" "The guy by the pillar, the one you were just eye-fucking." "Derek, don't." His voice had gone flat. He was still smiling at Tom Brennan, still holding his club soda, but the arm around her waist had become a bar of iron. "Don't play dumb with me, Lena. Who is he?" "I don't know him." "You don't know him." "I've never seen him before in my life. I swear to God." Tom Brennan was watching them now, and even through his bourbon haze, he could tell something was off. He cleared his throat. "You know, I'm going to go find my wife. Derek, we'll talk Monday." "Monday," Derek said, still smiling, still not looking at Tom. Tom nodded and escaped. Derek walked her toward the edge of the room. To anyone watching, they looked like a couple stepping aside to have a private moment. His arm around her waist, his head bent close to hers. Very intimate, very charming. His fingers were digging into her hip bone hard enough that she knew there'd be a mark there tomorrow. A small round bruise to match the others. A fingerprint of his ownership. "You want to embarrass me tonight, Lena? In front of these people?" "I wasn't—" "You know who that is?" "I don't. I swear. That's Victor Salvatore." She didn't know the name. She hadn't kept up. Derek kept her world very small. The apartment, the gym, the occasional lunch with one of the wives of his friends. Women she didn't like who didn't like her either. The news she got came filtered through Derek. The only thing she knew about Chicago's underworld was that it existed somewhere beneath the surface of the city like a second circulatory system, and that Derek sometimes did favors for people he wouldn't name and got paid in ways he wouldn't explain. The name Salvatore, though, the way Derek said it, the way the muscle in his jaw jumped when he said it, she understood that this was a name that mattered. This was a name that meant something. "Derek, I don't know who he is. I looked at him because he was looking at me. That's all." "Oh, he was looking at you." "Derek, please." "Don't please me in that voice. I hate that voice." "I'm sorry." "You're sorry." He laughed, soft, dangerous. "You're going to be sorry." She felt the bottom drop out of her stomach. She knew that tone. That was the tone that meant he'd already decided how the rest of the night was going to go. The rest of the night and tomorrow morning, and however long it took him to feel like he'd made his point. She'd learned to read his voice the way sailors learn to read the sky. "Let's get some air," he said. "Come on, you look pale." "I'm fine. Come on." There was a terrace off the east side of the ballroom, closed to guests because of the cold but accessible through a side door the staff used. Derek knew the hotel. He'd done events here before. He steered her toward the side door with his arm still around her waist and a genial smile on his face, and she understood what was about to happen, and there was nothing she could do about it. If she made a scene, he'd make it worse. If she pulled away, he'd make it worse. If she tried to tell someone, anyone, he'd smile at them and tell them his wife had had too much wine and he was just getting her some air, and they'd believe him because he was charming and he was a big donor and she was nobody. And then tomorrow he'd make sure she remembered what had happened the last time she tried to embarrass him. She let herself be steered. They were 5 feet from the side door when a voice behind them said, "Mrs. Hale?" Derek stopped walking. Lena stopped walking. Derek turned first, with a smile already in place. Lena turned a half second after him, and her stomach did something unpleasant, because Victor Salvatore was standing 3 feet away, with his glass of clear liquid still in his hand, and his 2 dark-suited men standing a respectful 10 feet behind him. And he was looking at Derek now, not at her. "I'm sorry," Derek said. "I don't believe we've met." "We haven't." His voice was lower than she'd expected. Lower and quieter. A voice that didn't need to be loud to be heard, because the room had already started to quiet around it. People were noticing now the way a ripple goes through a pond when something heavy drops in. "Victor Salvatore." He extended his hand. Derek shook it. Derek's smile was still in place, but Lena could feel the tension running up his arm through his grip on her waist. "Derek Hale. This is my wife, Lena. We haven't met either." Victor Salvatore's eyes came to hers for a half second and then back to Derek's. "Mr. Hale, I wanted to introduce myself. We have a mutual acquaintance." Do we? Alderman Kowalski. The change in Derek's face was very small and very fast. Lena might not have caught it if she hadn't spent 2 years studying his face for weather patterns. The corner of his mouth did a thing. The skin around his eyes did a thing. For the briefest flicker, he was something other than charming, and then the charming mask slid back into place. Kowalski, sure. Great guy. He speaks highly of you. That's nice to hear. He mentioned you were working on the Kinsey Street project. I am. I'm an investor in a competing bid. I see. I thought we might have coffee next week. Clear the air. I don't like surprises in my city. Derek's hand on Lena's waist had gone cold. Not loose, still clamped, still controlling, but cold. The way a hand goes cold when the blood decides it's needed somewhere else. Sure, Derek said. Coffee. Happy to. Good. Victor Salvatore's eyes moved, and this time they stayed on Lena's face. Mrs. Hale, forgive me. I don't mean to interrupt. You look like you could use some water. I'm fine. You don't look fine. She's fine, Derek said, and his voice had an edge in it now. Thanks for your concern, Mr. Salvatore. We were just getting some air. It's 28 degrees out there, Victor said. She runs warm. Does she? The three of them stood there in a triangle, and the space around them had gone strange and quiet. People had started to drift away without being obvious about it, the way people do when they sense something they don't want to be near. The string quartet was still playing. The chandeliers were still burning. But within a radius of maybe 15 feet, the party had begun to dissolve. Victor's eyes had not left Lena's face. He was reading her again the way he'd read her across the room, reading the tension in her jaw, reading the way she was holding her shoulder, reading the way her breath was coming a little too fast and a little too shallow. She could feel his gaze going over the bruise on her shoulder blade like a finger tracing the edge of it. Mrs. Hale, he said quietly, would you like to sit down? She's fine, Derek said. I wasn't asking you. Lena's throat closed up. She tried to speak and nothing came out. Derek's hand tightened on her waist. It was the kind of grip that was going to leave marks. And she knew he didn't care, that in this moment he was making a calculation about whether to make a scene and deciding it was worth it. Lena, baby, tell the man you're fine. He's embarrassing himself. She opened her mouth. Victor's eyes were on her. 2 seconds passed. 3. I'm fine, she whispered. Good girl. Derek's smile came back. Mr. Salvatore, my wife and I are going to step outside for a minute, and then we're going to enjoy the rest of this beautiful party. I'll call your office about that coffee. Have a good night. Victor didn't move. For what felt like a long time, he didn't move. He stood there with his glass in his hand and his eyes on Lena's face, and she could see something happening behind his eyes, something being decided. The two men behind him hadn't moved either. The quartet played on. Someone across the room laughed, too loud, the way people laugh at parties when they're trying not to notice something. Mrs. Hale, Victor said, I'm going to ask you one more time. Are you all right? She said she was fine, Derek said, and his voice had risen just a fraction, just enough that a few more heads turned. Jesus Christ, man, what part of that isn't landing? We're leaving. Lena, let's go. He pulled her. That was the moment. Later, when she tried to reconstruct it for herself, she'd come back to that exact second. The pull. The small, hard yank of his hand on her waist that moved her half a step toward the side door and rotated her slightly off her heels, and the small, involuntary sound that came out of her throat, not a word, just a sound, a short, hurt exhalation. And the way Victor Salvatore's face changed. His face didn't do much. That was the thing. A less observant person would have said his face didn't change at all. But something went out of his eyes, and something else came into them. And it was the kind of change a rabbit would understand 2 seconds before a hawk hit it. Take your hand off her, Victor said. Excuse me? Take your hand off her. Now, please. Mr. Salvatore, Derek. Victor's voice had gone very soft. I'm being polite. It's the last time I'm going to be. Derek didn't move his hand. For about 3 seconds, nobody in the triangle moved. Lena's breath had stopped. She could feel Derek's pulse through his grip on her hip, fast and angry. She could see the two dark-suited men behind Victor shift their weight an inch, the way men shift their weight when they are about to be asked to do something. She could see Victor's free hand hanging loose at his side, fingers half curled, absolutely still. And then Victor did something she didn't expect. He set his glass down on a small table beside him. He did it gently, without looking at the table, without breaking eye contact with Derek. He stepped around Derek, not toward him, around him, a smooth sidestep that put him directly in front of Lena, and he looked at her face for one more second, and then he spoke to her like Derek wasn't there. Mrs. Hale, I'm going to do something, and I need you to trust me for 30 seconds. Can you do that? 30 seconds. That's all. She didn't know what her face did. She didn't know what she answered. Something about her expression must have been enough, because Victor Salvatore reached up with his left hand and cupped the side of her face, and his hand was warm, and his thumb traced along her cheekbone with the kind of tenderness a person uses on something breakable. And then he tilted her chin up and he kissed her. The room stopped. She could feel it stop. 300 people, and the string quartet, and the bartenders, and the waiters with their trays. The entire ballroom took a breath and held it. The kiss wasn't hungry. It wasn't a performance. It was firm and warm, and it lasted maybe 4 seconds. And it said exactly one thing to everyone who was watching, and the thing it said was mine. When he pulled back, his hand was still on her face. He was looking at her, not at Derek. His voice was so quiet she could barely hear it over the pounding of her own blood. I've got you, he said. Nod if you understand me. She nodded. Good. Then he turned to Derek. Derek had gone white. Not pale. White. The specific bloodless white that a face goes when the brain is trying to catch up with a thing that has happened too fast. His hand had fallen off her waist. He was staring at Victor, and at Lena, and at Victor again, and his mouth was opening and closing and nothing was coming out. What? He started. Mr. Hale, Victor said. His voice had gone back to that terrible quiet evenness. You've had a long night. I think you should go home. You kissed my wife. She's not your wife. The silence that followed was the loudest thing in the room. Lena's heart stopped. Victor's eyes stayed on Derek's face, and there was no particular expression in them, just a patient, waiting stillness that was somehow worse than any anger would have been. I did my homework before I came over here, Victor said. You two aren't married. You never filed. You call her your wife because it makes you comfortable. That's fine. I don't care what you call her. What I care about is that you put your hands on her tonight in a way I didn't like. And before that, I'd bet in ways I'd like even less. Is that about right? You don't know a goddamn thing about her shoulder, Derek. What? Her left shoulder. The bruise. I can see it from here. Everyone in this room can see it. Everyone's been pretending they can't because it's easier. I'm not going to pretend. Derek's jaw worked. His eyes darted around the room, and Lena saw him see, what Victor had already made sure of. People had stopped pretending not to watch. Tom Brennan was staring. A woman Lena didn't know had a hand over her mouth. The gray-haired man from before was watching with an expression of cold interest. The two dark-suited men had shifted again, and now they were standing just slightly closer, and the space around the triangle had widened, like a crowd around a fire. I don't know what you think you saw, Derek said, and his voice had an ugly edge now. But you just made a mistake, Salvatore. You just made a very big mistake. You know who my friends are. I know exactly who your friends are. I had dinner with 2 of them last week. They're not going to be your friends on Monday. You can't. I can. I do. I will. Victor's hand came up again, and this time it settled on Lena's lower back, not gripping, just resting there. The difference between his touch and Derek's was so total she almost lost her balance. Mrs. Marlowe, and that's what I'm going to call her because that's her name, is going to leave here with me tonight. She's going to collect her things from your apartment tomorrow, with people I'm going to send. You are not going to be there. You are not going to call her. You are not going to text her. You are not going to drive past her. If you do, I'll know. And then we won't be having a conversation like this one. Do you understand me? You're insane. I asked if you understood me. You can't just... Derek! Victor's voice had gone for one fractional second into a register that made the hairs on the back of Lena's neck stand up. Then it was back to even. I'm going to ask you one more time. Do you understand me? Derek's mouth closed. His eyes moved to Lena's face, and she saw in them a thing she'd never seen before. Confusion, real confusion. The kind a man feels when a piece of furniture he's been sitting on for 2 years stands up and walks away. Then the confusion curdled into something else. Rage. That particular rage she knew very well, the rage he usually waited to unwrap in private. His mouth started to move. "Don't," Lena said. It came out louder than she'd meant. Her voice cracked on the word, but the word was clear, and it was the first word she'd spoken of her own free will in what felt like an hour. "Don't say anything, Derek. Please." He stared at her. "Lena, I'll come get my things tomorrow." "Lena, baby, stop calling me that." She didn't recognize her own voice. It was coming out of her chest from somewhere she hadn't known still existed. Victor's hand on her back was very still. He wasn't pulling her. He wasn't pushing her. He was just there, warm and solid, and she realized she was shaking, and had been shaking for a while, and hadn't noticed. Derek looked at her for a long moment. Whatever he saw in her face did something to him. His jaw set. His eyes went flat. He took one step back, smoothed the lapel of his jacket with a hand that was not quite steady, and looked at Victor. "This isn't over." "It is," Victor said. "You just don't know it yet." Derek held his gaze for another second, then turned and walked away. He didn't go toward the side door. He went toward the main doors through the crowd, which parted for him the way a crowd parts for a man who's had too much to drink and is still dangerous. People watched him go. The quartet picked up again tentatively, a few bars behind where it should have been. The murmur of conversation began to reassemble itself, quieter now, different in shape. Victor's hand stayed on her back. "Mrs. Marlowe." "Lena," she said. "It's Lena." "Lena." His voice had gone gentle. Not soft. Gentle was different. "You're going to sit down now. Michael, get her a glass of water. Dominic, get her coat and mine, and get the car. Lena, look at me." She looked at him. His face, up close, was all angles and a small scar at the corner of his mouth and eyes the color of wet slate. She didn't know this man. She'd known him for less than 10 minutes. He had just kissed her in front of 300 people and told her non-husband to leave the city, and her life had just torn in half in front of her, and she didn't know this man at all. "You're going to be all right," he said. "I promise you that. Do you believe me?" "I don't know you." "No, you don't." "Why did you do that?" He didn't answer right away. He looked at her face for another second, and something complicated moved behind his eyes, and whatever it was, he didn't share it. "Because," he said finally, "I watched you walk across this room, and nobody else in this room saw you, and I'm not in the habit of letting a thing like that happen." He didn't smile. She didn't smile. The quartet was playing something quieter now, something she didn't recognize. Her shoulder hurt. Her hip hurt. Her throat hurt from holding in a sound she hadn't known she was holding in. One of the dark-suited men came back with a glass of water. Victor took it and put it in her hand, and her hand was shaking so badly she nearly dropped it, and he steadied her wrist with 2 fingers and waited, and she drank. The other man came back with a coat. Not hers. A man's coat, long and dark and heavy, and Victor put it over her shoulders without asking. "The car's outside," he said. "Are you ready?" She wasn't ready. She hadn't been ready for any of this. She looked around the ballroom one more time, at the marble, and the chandeliers, and the 300 faces that were still now, mostly pretending not to watch her, and she thought about the apartment on the Gold Coast with her clothes in the closet, and her books on the shelf, and the small, careful life she'd built inside the shape of another person's cage. "Yes," she said. He offered his arm. She took it. They walked out of the Peninsula Hotel together, and the valet had the car already idling at the curb, a long black sedan with another driver at the wheel, and the October cold off Lake Michigan hit her face like water, and she understood, with the same terror she'd felt an hour ago, that her life was about to split in half. It already had. The sedan pulled away from the peninsula and merged onto Michigan Avenue, and Lena Marlowe sat in the back seat with a stranger's coat over her shoulders and her hands folded in her lap so they wouldn't shake so visibly. The city slid past the tinted window in streaks of red and gold. The driver didn't speak. Victor Salvatore sat on the bench seat across from her, not beside her. She noticed that, and was grateful for it in a way she didn't have words for. And he didn't speak either. The only sound in the car was the hum of the tires on cold pavement and the faint, distant pulse of her own heartbeat inside her ears. She didn't know where they were going. She hadn't asked. That was a strange realization to have, sitting in a stranger's car in a dress that wasn't hers, with her phone still in her clutch and her wallet still in her clutch, and nothing in her hands but the glass of water she'd forgotten to leave at the hotel. She looked down at the glass. There was still water in it. Her knuckles were white around the stem. "You can put that down," Victor said quietly. "There's a holder in the door." She set the glass into the little cup holder by the window. Her hand didn't quite want to let go of it. "I don't know where we're going. My house in Lincoln Park. It's maybe 20 minutes in this traffic. You'll have a room to yourself, a door that locks from the inside. A phone if you want to call anyone. There's a woman who works for me, her name is Rosa, who's going to meet us there. She'll help you with whatever you need tonight. I won't be on the same floor as you. I won't knock on your door. Nothing is going to happen tonight except you sleeping in a bed where no one can touch you. Is that clear?" She nodded. Her throat was doing the thing where it closed up when she tried to speak. "I need to hear you say yes or no, Lena." "Yes." It came out thin. "That's clear." "Okay." He leaned back against the seat. In the passing light from the street lamps, his face went from shadow to shadow. "You can ask me anything you want to ask me. Or you cannot say anything for the rest of the drive. Either is fine." She watched the city go by. Wacker Drive, then on to Lake Shore. The lake was a slab of black off to the right, invisible except for the lights of a freighter somewhere out on the water, tiny and very far away. She thought about the apartment on the Gold Coast, her sister Maya's phone number, which she still remembered even though she hadn't dialed it in almost a year. The book on her nightstand, a novel she'd been reading in 15-minute increments between Derek's moods. A pair of earrings her mother had left her, and a little ceramic dish on the dresser. "My things," she said. "Tomorrow." "My sister. I need to call my sister." "You can call her tonight, from the house." "He'll go after her." Victor was quiet for a second. "Where does she live?" "Oak Park." "She's a teacher, 3rd grade. She has a husband and a little boy. And Derek met her one time, 2 years ago, and he didn't like her, and..." The words were coming faster now, out of order. "And he said things to me about her afterwards, things he'd do if I ever called her, and I stopped calling her. I just stopped, and she's going to be angry with me. She's going to be so angry with me. Lena. She's going to think I chose him over her. Lena, look at me." She looked at him. His face in the shifting light was very still. "Your sister is safe tonight. I'll have someone on her street before we get to the house. Not in her house, not bothering her. On her street. Just until I know what Derek's next move is going to be. You're going to call her when we get inside, and you're going to tell her what you want to tell her. And if she's angry, that's her right, and you can deal with that tomorrow. Tonight, she's safe. You're safe. That's all that has to be true tonight. Why are you doing this?" "I told you at the hotel." "That wasn't an answer. That was a thing you said." For the first time since she'd met him, something very small and very tired moved at the corner of his mouth. It wasn't a smile. It was the place where a smile would have been if he were a man who smiled at things. "That's fair," he said. He didn't say anything else for a while. The car crossed the river, slid up past the Hancock, turned west onto North Avenue. Lena kept her eyes on the window because looking at his face was too much to manage. "I had a sister," he said finally. His voice was lower than it had been. "A long time ago. She married a man who was very good at seeming like a good man. By the time we figured out what was actually happening, it was too late to help her the way she needed to be helped. So we buried her, and we handled the man, and I told myself I was going to do better the next time I saw it coming." Lena didn't say anything. She could feel her eyes stinging, and she didn't know if it was for the woman she'd never met or for herself. "I'm not telling you that because I want you to feel grateful," Victor said. "I'm telling you because you asked. You're not a project. You're not a debt I'm paying. You walked across a room in a dress that didn't fit you, and I saw what was happening to you, and I decided I wasn't going to watch one more time. That's all. You don't owe me anything. When we get to the house, and tomorrow, and the day after that, you get to decide what you want. If what you want is for me to put you on a plane to your sister's house in Oak Park and never see you again, I'll do that tomorrow morning. I'm not saying it. I know. I'm just telling you, so you know." She turned her face toward the window. A tear slid down her cheek, and she let it. She didn't wipe it away. She'd spent 2 years wiping tears away fast so Derek wouldn't see them, and she was so tired of it she could have put her head down on the car seat and slept for a week. The house was on a quiet street off Dickens, set back behind a wrought iron gate that swung open when the driver pulled up to it. The driveway was short and lined with old elms. The house itself was brick, 3 stories, with wide stone steps up to a heavy black door. The kind of house that had been built around the turn of the last century for a family with a name. There were lights on in the front windows, warm yellow, soft. Victor got out first and came around to her side of the car. He opened the door, but he didn't offer his hand. He stood back a step and waited, and she understood this was deliberate, that he was giving her room, and she got out on her own power in the borrowed heels and the borrowed coat and walked up the stone steps beside him at her own pace. The front door opened before they got to it. A woman stood in the doorway, maybe 55, with iron gray hair pulled back in a clip and a cardigan over her shoulders, and a face that was somewhere between kind and assessing. "Rosa," Victor said, "this is Lena Marlowe." "Come inside, honey. You must be freezing in that." Rosa put a hand on Lena's elbow and drew her gently through the door, and Lena let herself be drawn. The entry hall was high-ceilinged, dark wood, a chandelier that was nothing like the chandeliers at the peninsula, smaller, older, a real antique, nothing for show. A staircase curved up on the left. A long hallway ran back toward the kitchen. Somewhere in the house a clock was ticking, heavy and slow. "I've got a room ready for you upstairs," Rosa said. "Second floor, east side, end of the hall. It's got its own bathroom. There's pajamas on the bed. They'll be a little big, but they're clean. There's tea or water or anything else you want. There's a phone on the nightstand. Landline works fine. If you need me, I'm on the first floor, third door on the right, off the kitchen. I don't sleep heavy. You knock. I'll be up." "Thank you." Rosa looked at her for a second. "Honey, have you eaten anything tonight?" She tried to remember. There had been canapes at the gala that she hadn't touched. Before that, she'd been too nervous about what Derek would think of the dress to eat lunch. "Not really. I'll bring something up, nothing heavy, toast and a little soup. You don't have to eat it, but it'll be there. I don't want to be any trouble." Rosa made a small sound in her throat, something between a laugh and a tisk. "You're not trouble. Come on, stairs." Victor hadn't moved from the doorway. Lena paused at the bottom of the stairs and turned. "Mr. Salvatore?" "Victor? Victor? Thank you. I don't know what else to say." "You don't have to say anything." He put his hands in his pockets. "Sleep. We'll figure out the rest of it when you wake up." She nodded and she followed Rosa up the stairs. The room at the end of the hall was larger than she'd expected. A 4-poster bed made up with a soft white duvet, a window that looked out over a small back garden with bare elms and a stone bench, a dresser, a reading chair, a rug that was old and beautiful. Everything was quiet. Everything was still. The door had a bolt on the inside, and Rosa pointed at it without saying anything, and Lena understood that Rosa had put the bolt on herself, maybe that afternoon, maybe an hour ago. "Bathroom's through there. There's a robe on the hook. I'll be back in 10 minutes with some food. You take your time." Rosa closed the door behind her, and Lena stood in the middle of the room for a long moment. And then she walked over and slid the bolt home, and the soft click of the metal in the housing was the first thing in 2 years that made her feel like the world might not be about to end. She called her sister from the landline with her shoes still on. Maya picked up on the third ring, and her voice was thick with sleep, and Lena said, "Maya, it's me." And Maya made a sound Lena hadn't heard her make before, a short, sharp thing like she'd been hit. "Lena." "Maya, Lena, oh my God, Lena, where are you? Are you okay? I'm okay. I'm safe. I left him." "You what?" "I left him, tonight. I'm somewhere safe. I'm going to come see you tomorrow or the next day. I don't know exactly yet, but I wanted you to know, I wanted you to know I'm okay. And I'm sorry, Maya. I'm so sorry." Maya was crying. Lena could hear it through the line, small and broken, the way Maya had cried when they were kids and she'd fallen off her bike on Granville and skinned both knees. "Don't you apologize to me," Maya said. "Don't you dare apologize to me. You're okay. You're okay. That's all that matters. Lena, where are you? Do you need me to come get you? I'll drive right now." "No. No. Maya, listen. There's going to be somebody on your street tonight, a car. Don't be scared. They're not there for you. They're there to make sure nothing happens. It's a long story." "Lena, what?" I'll tell you everything tomorrow. I promise. I just needed to hear your voice. I love you, Lenny. Nobody had called her Lenny in 2 years. Derek hadn't liked it. He'd said it sounded like a boy's name. She put her free hand over her mouth and sat down on the edge of the bed because her legs weren't going to hold her up. I love you too, she whispered. She hung up. She sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. When Rosa knocked softly 20 minutes later, Lena had to unfold herself out of a place very far away to go answer the door. The tray had a bowl of chicken soup, a plate with 2 slices of buttered toast, a cup of tea, and a small plate of sliced pear. Rosa set it on the little table by the reading chair. Eat what you want. Leave the rest. I'll get it in the morning. Rosa. Yeah. Does he bring women here a lot? The question came out before she could stop it. It was not the question she'd meant to ask. She felt her face go hot. Rosa looked at her for a second, then sat down on the edge of the reading chair, her cardigan pulling tight across her shoulders, and she folded her hands in her lap the way a woman folds her hands in church. Honey, Victor Salvatore has not brought a woman to this house in the 11 years I've worked for him. Not for dinner, not for coffee, not for anything. You're the first. I don't know what it means, and it's not my place to know. But I'll tell you this because I think you need to hear it tonight. That man does not do things he hasn't thought about. If he told you were safe here, then you're safe here. That's the only thing you need to worry about tonight. Lena's eyes filled up, and she looked at the ceiling so they wouldn't spill over, and Rosa pretended not to notice. Rosa stood up and smoothed her cardigan and went to the door. Lock it behind me. I'll see you in the morning. Lena ate the toast. She tried the soup. It was hot and good, and she got through half of it before her throat closed up. She changed into the pajamas, which were men's and enormous and smelled like clean linen, and she washed her face in the bathroom and scrubbed the makeup off with a washcloth until her skin was pink and her eyes were raw. In the mirror, she looked at her own face for longer than she'd let herself look in a year. The woman in the mirror was pale and thin and had shadows under her eyes, but she was the woman who had lived. That was something. That was a start. She slid into the bed. The sheets were cold for about 10 seconds and then warm. Somewhere in the house, far away, a pipe ticked as it warmed. She thought she wouldn't be able to sleep. She was wrong. Her body had been running on adrenaline for so many hours that the second her head touched the pillow, it called in a debt she couldn't refuse, and she was gone. She woke once, sometime in the deepest part of the night, to a sound in the hallway. She froze. Her hand went to her throat before she'd even opened her eyes. Then she heard what it was. Footsteps, slow, going past her door, not stopping. A man's footsteps, heavy but careful. They went down the hall and down the stairs, and then the house was quiet again. She didn't know if it was Victor. She didn't know if it mattered. She listened for another long minute, and when nothing else happened, she slid back into sleep. She woke the second time to gray light through the window and a clock on the mantel that said 7:10. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. Then she did, and the memory of the night before slammed into her, all of it at once. The dress, the kiss, the car. Derek's face going white, Maya crying on the phone. And she lay there under the duvet and let it come. And when it was done, she got out of bed. The clothes from the night before were gone. In their place, folded on the reading chair, were jeans, a soft gray sweater, a pair of flats, and a set of underwear with the tag still on. A note in a woman's handwriting sat on top. Rough guess on sizes. Coffee downstairs when you're ready. R. Lena stood in the middle of the room and held the note. And it was such a small kindness, so specific, so practical, that she had to sit down on the edge of the bed again. She got dressed. The jeans fit. The sweater was a little long in the sleeves, which was fine. She put her hair up. In the bathroom mirror, she looked like a person, a slightly hollow-eyed person, but a person. She took a breath. She went downstairs. The kitchen was at the back of the house, a long, narrow room with a window over the sink that looked onto the garden. Rosa was at the stove, and a man was sitting at the big oak table with a cup of coffee in front of him and a newspaper folded by his elbow. Not Victor. One of the dark-suited men from the night before, in a sweater and jeans now, looking less terrifying and more like a guy at a diner. He stood up when she came in. "Ma'am, Michael, we met last night, sort of." Michael. "Hi. Victor's in the study. He asked me to let you know whenever you were ready. No rush." "Thanks." Rosa turned around with a plate in her hand. Sit. Eggs, toast, coffee. Lena sat. The coffee was very good. The eggs were better. She ate half the plate before she realized she was hungry, and she slowed down and ate the rest more carefully. Michael sat across from her and read his newspaper and didn't look at her more than he had to. Rosa puttered at the sink. The clock on the wall ticked. "Ma'am," Michael said after a while, "your sister called the house at 6:30. I took the message. She's fine. She wanted you to know she's taking a personal day and she's staying home with the baby. She said to call her when you wake up. I've got the number written down here." He slid a piece of paper across the table. Lena folded it into her palm. "Thank you." "Sure." "Michael, can I ask, were you at her house last night?" "Me? No. Dominic went. He's still there. She doesn't know he's there. He's parked 2 houses down, and he'll be there until we know more." "Okay." She looked at her coffee. "Okay." When she'd finished, Rosa pointed her down a hallway off the kitchen, and at the end of the hallway was a pair of tall doors, and one of the doors was open. Lena stopped outside it and knocked anyway. "Come in." The study was a room for a man who read. Books on 3 walls, floor to ceiling, with a ladder on a rail. A big desk by the window stacked with papers and a laptop. A fireplace with a low fire in it. 2 leather armchairs by the fireplace, and Victor Salvatore in one of them, in jeans and a dark blue Henley, reading glasses on, looking over a folder of what looked like contracts. He set the folder down when she came in and took the glasses off, and he stood up. "Lena, good morning. Did you sleep?" "A little." "Sit, please." She sat in the armchair across from his. The fire was warm. Through the window she could see the back garden, the same bare elms she'd looked at from her bedroom, and a cardinal on the stone bench, bright red against the gray morning. "I'll be quick," Victor said. "You have things you need to decide, and I don't want to waste your time. So, here's what's happened, and what I'd like to do, and then you tell me what you want. Okay?" Last night, after we left the hotel, Derek went back to the apartment. He was drunk when he got there. He threw some things around. He sent you 4 voicemails and 31 text messages. I had the messages read. You don't need to read them. They escalate from apology to threat in about 40 minutes, which is about standard. I'd like your permission to have the phone replaced and have your number changed this morning. Yes or no? Yes. Good. Second, your things. There's a crew I use for this, 3 women, 1 man. All of them are good and fast and careful. They'll go to the apartment at 10. Derek won't be there. He's currently in a meeting across town he can't get out of, which I arranged. They'll pack everything of yours and bring it here. Clothes, books, personal items, anything with your name on it. If there's something specific you want, tell me now. If there's something you don't want, tell me now. There's a dish off the dresser, ceramic, white with a blue edge. My mother's earrings are in it. Got it. A novel on the nightstand. I don't remember the title. It has a blue cover. Okay. The rest, I don't care. I don't want most of it. Whatever was his, whatever he bought me, I don't... Her voice caught. I don't want to see it. Understood. We'll bring the essentials and leave the rest. Thank you. Third, Derek himself. He has, as of this morning, lost the Kinsey Street project, which was worth about $4 million to him personally. He has lost 3 of the 5 board seats he sat on. By the end of the week, he won't have a firm. By the end of the month, he won't have a condo. None of this is your problem. I mention it so you know what's happening in his life. Because when a man like that starts losing, he becomes unpredictable, and we have to plan around that. You did all that already? Some of it. The rest is in motion. He's not a difficult man to dismantle. He doesn't have friends. He has people who tolerated him because he was useful. He's not useful anymore. She stared at him. The cardinal on the bench hopped once and flew away. Fourth, Victor said, and this is the one where I want you to tell me what you want. A report has been filed with the police, anonymously, about a pattern of abuse. They're going to want to talk to you. You don't have to cooperate. You don't have to press charges. That's entirely your decision. If you want to walk away from all of it and never see him or a courtroom again, I can make that happen. If you want to put him in prison, I can help with that too. It's your call. She was quiet for a long time. I don't know, she said finally. I don't know what I want. That's a fair answer. Is it? I feel like I should know. You were in the same room with that man 12 hours ago. If you knew what you wanted right now, I'd be worried about you. Take your time. You have some. She looked down at her hands. Her nails were chipped under the polish. She'd been chewing them in her sleep, apparently. She didn't remember doing it. Can I ask you something? Anything. Last night, at the hotel, when you kissed me. She felt her face warm and pushed through it. You said you'd made a decision before you came over. You said you weren't going to watch again. Yes. Did you know, before, that Derek was that he was like that, with me? Victor set the folder he'd been holding down on the little table between them. He folded his hands in his lap and he looked at her very steadily. I knew Derek Hale was a bad man. I knew that before last night. I'd been collecting information on him for about 6 weeks because he'd gotten involved with a piece of property that my people had an interest in. And when I looked at him, I didn't like what I saw. I didn't know you existed until last night. I saw you walk in, and I saw how he was holding you, and I watched you for about 20 minutes before I decided what to do. I would have made a move on him this week either way. It would have been cleaner and slower. What I did last night was faster and louder, and I did it in front of 300 people because I wanted it to be on record, in front of witnesses, where he couldn't deny it and couldn't walk it back and couldn't get you alone later. The kiss. The kiss was a tool. I'm not going to lie to you about that. I needed to put a flag on you in that room in a way that every person there would understand and remember. A handshake wouldn't have done it. A word wouldn't have done it. What I did would do it, and it did. I'm sorry if it was more than you wanted. You didn't get to choose, and that's not nothing, and I've been thinking about it since last night. It's fine. It's not fine. I did it without asking. I'm not going to pretend it was fine. I said, I heard you. I'm telling you anyway. The next thing I do that involves you, I'll ask first. That's a thing I'm promising you, not a thing I'm asking you to agree to. She looked at him. He didn't look away. There was something in his face, not warmth exactly, not softness, but a kind of open honesty that made her throat hurt in a different way than it had hurt last night. She had not been told the truth plainly by a man in a very long time. Okay, she said. Okay. Okay. I want to press charges. Okay. I don't know if I can, but I want to. I want to try. We'll get you a lawyer, a good one, not mine, somebody who works for you. There's a woman I'd recommend. She's not connected to me. She does this work specifically. Her name is Corinne Delacroix. I can have her here this afternoon if you want. Yes. I'll make the call. Lena pressed her hands together in her lap, hard. Victor. Yeah. Why do I trust you? He considered this for a moment, the way a person considers a real question. I don't know, he said. That's for you to figure out. I'd say don't, entirely, yet. Trust is a thing that gets earned. I'll try to earn it. Some of what I've done in my life you would not admire if you knew about it. I'm not going to pretend to be a man I'm not, but the specific thing I told you last night, that you're safe here and that no one will touch you, that is true. That will stay true. Okay. You want some more coffee? Yeah. He got up and went to a sideboard by the window where there was a French press and 2 cups, and he poured her a fresh one and handed it to her, and his fingers brushed hers when he passed the cup, and she didn't flinch, and she noticed that she didn't flinch, and she held that small fact in her chest like a lit match. They sat by the fire for another half hour. He didn't push. He asked a few small questions about her sister, about her nephew's name, about whether she was cold, and she answered them, and when she went quiet, he let her be quiet. Once she almost cried, and he pretended to be very interested in the fire until she had herself back. When his phone buzzed on the side table, he glanced at it, frowned, and didn't pick it up. Problem? She said. Nothing you need to think about. Derek? His lawyer called mine. That's normal. It's fine. She drank her coffee. The cardinal came back to the bench in the garden. A second cardinal, smaller, duller, landed on the bench beside it. She watched them for a minute. At 11, Corinne Delacroix arrived. She was a small, sharp woman in her 50s, with silver in her dark hair and a leather folio under one arm, and she came into the study and shook Lena's hand and didn't waste a second on pleasantries. She sat down in the chair Victor had been sitting in, which Victor had vacated without being asked, and she opened her folio. Lena, I'm going to ask you some hard questions. You tell me what you can, and if you can't tell me something, you say so. We don't have to do all of it today. We just have to start. Okay. Victor, get out. Going. He left the study and closed the door behind him, and Lena was alone with Corinne Delacroix and a fire and a notepad, and the small, sharp woman looked at her across the space between the armchairs and said, "Let's start with the first time he hit you. It took 2 hours." Lena cried twice. Corinne handed her tissues without commenting. She did not touch her, did not say it's okay, did not say you're so brave. She asked precise questions and wrote precise answers. When they got to the worst of it, Corinne's face didn't change, and that was somehow exactly what Lena needed, to say a thing out loud and have it not shock the room. By the time they stopped, it was past 1 in the afternoon, and there was a fresh pot of coffee on the side table that Rosa had brought in without either of them noticing. "Okay," Corinne said. She closed the folio. "I have enough to start. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll keep going. In the meantime, don't talk to anyone else about any of this. Not the police yet, not your sister, not anyone. If Derek calls you from a blocked number, and he will, don't answer. Don't read his texts. If you feel yourself wanting to, call me first. That's my cell." She passed Lena a card. "One more thing." Corinne's voice softened, just a fraction. "You were not crazy. Everything you just told me, I've heard variations of it 100 times. You were not unique, you were not stupid, you were not weak. You were in a situation that was designed to make you doubt yourself. It worked on you because it works on everyone. You understand me?" "I understand." "Good." Corinne stood up. "I'll see you tomorrow." She left. Lena sat in the chair for a long time by herself. The fire had died down. Rosa came in at some point and built it back up without speaking, and left. Lena closed her eyes. When she opened them, Victor was in the doorway. He didn't come in. He was leaning against the frame with his arms crossed, and his face was unreadable, and he was looking at her the way a man looks at something he's trying not to look at too directly. "You hungry?" he said. "No." "You should eat." "I know." He came in then, and sat down in the other chair, and they didn't speak for a while. Outside the window, the day was darkening early, the way it did in late October, the light going blue at the edges. "My things," Lena said, "upstairs, in your room. The dish with the earrings is on the dresser. The novel is on the nightstand. The rest is in boxes. You can go through them when you want, or not at all." "Thank you." "You don't have to thank me for that." "I know. I'm going to anyway." He almost smiled. It was the closest to a smile she'd seen on him. "Victor." "Yeah. What happens now?" He thought about it. He rubbed his jaw with the back of his knuckles. "Now you stay here, as long as you want. You work with Corinne, you talk to your sister, you sleep, you eat. You remember what your life looked like before it stopped being yours, and you figure out what parts of it you want back and what parts you don't. Derek doesn't come near you. That's not a promise I can make about the whole world, but it's a promise I can make about that specific thing. He's going to try. He's going to get worse before he gets better. I'm going to handle it. You're going to be okay. And you?" He looked at her. "What about me? What do you want from this? From me?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Right now," he said, "nothing. That's the truth. Right now I want you to sleep and eat and talk to your sister and work with Corinne and be somewhere where nothing is going to happen to you that you don't want to happen. What I want long term is not a question that's on the table today. It might never be on the table. That's not up to me. Why isn't it up to you? Because you've had 2 years of being told what you wanted by a man. You don't need another one. Whatever this becomes or doesn't become, you're going to decide it. Not me. That's the only way it works." She looked at the fire. She thought about the ballroom, the moment before he'd crossed the room to her, the moment when she'd understood she was trapped and there was no way out. She thought about the look on his face when he'd said, "Take your hand off her." She thought about the kiss, which she had not let herself think about all day, and which had been there at the edge of her mind the entire day. "Okay," she said. "Okay." The fire popped. A log settled. Outside, the first flakes of the season's first snow began to fall past the window, small and slow, catching the light from the room. Lena watched them come down for a long time, and Victor watched her watching, and neither of them spoke. And somewhere deep under the floors of the big old house, a pipe ticked once and went still. The snow kept falling all night, and by morning, Chicago was soft around the edges in a way it almost never was. Lena woke to the strange gray quiet of a city muffled under its first snowfall, and for a moment, before her brain caught up, she forgot where she was. Then she saw the four-poster bed and the reading chair, and the neat stack of boxes in the corner that held what was left of her life. And it all came back at once. She lay there for a while and listened to the house. Someone was moving around downstairs. A pot was being set on a burner. A man's voice, low, and then a woman's voice answering, and then quiet again. She got out of bed. Her body hurt in places she hadn't paid attention to in a long time: shoulder, hip, the side of her neck where Derek had liked to press his thumb when he wanted to make a point. The bruises were going to take weeks. She went through the boxes slowly. It was strange work, like opening someone else's mail. Her winter coat was in the first box, and a pair of boots she hadn't worn in a year because Derek had said they made her legs look thick. Her books were in the second box, arranged in no particular order by the women who'd packed them. She found her copy of East of Eden, which her mother had given her when she'd graduated from college, and she held it against her chest for a minute without meaning to. The third box was the one that made her sit down on the floor. Photo albums. Old ones, from before Derek. Pictures of Maya and her as kids. Pictures of their parents on a vacation in Door County. Pictures of Lena's graduation. Pictures from a trip she and her college roommate had taken to Seattle the summer they were 23. She had not looked at these pictures in 2 years. Derek had found one of them on her phone early on, a picture of her and an old boyfriend from before she'd even met him, and he'd broken her phone against the kitchen counter and then spent the rest of the night crying and apologizing. She'd stopped keeping photos after that. She got through one album before she had to stop. When she came downstairs, Rosa was at the stove and Michael was at the table with another newspaper, and there was a second man at the table she hadn't met before. Younger than Michael, maybe late 20s, red hair, freckles, a face that looked like it belonged to a kid from an Irish neighborhood who played hockey on weekends. "Ma'am," he said, standing up. "Tommy, I'm with Dominic on your sister's detail. He sent me over to check in. Is Maya okay?" "Yes, ma'am. Everything's quiet. She went to the grocery store this morning with the baby. Nobody followed her. Nobody was watching the house last night that we saw. She's fine." "Thank you." "My pleasure, ma'am." "Please stop calling me ma'am. I'm 31. Tommy grinned. It transformed his face. "Yes, ma'am. Sorry. Habit." Rosa put a plate of French toast in front of her and a pot of coffee in the middle of the table, and Lena ate, and Michael turned the page of his newspaper, and Tommy pretended to read the sports section while sneaking looks at her that she could feel without meeting his eyes. Not in a creepy way. In the way a young man looks at a woman he has been told he is responsible for and is trying to make sure is all right. Victor came into the kitchen at 8:30. He was in a dark suit again, a different one, charcoal, no tie, and he had a coat over his arm and keys in his hand. He stopped when he saw her. "Good morning." "Good morning. I have to be downtown most of the day. Corinne is coming at 10. If you need anything, Rosa has my number. Michael stays here with you. Tommy's going back to your sister's. If anything goes sideways, you call me, not anyone else. I have to be in a meeting at 10:30 that I can't step out of, but after that, I'm reachable." "Okay. There's a woman from the police department coming at 2. Detective named Amani Brooks. She's not on our side or Derek's side. She's on her own side, which is the right side. Corinne's going to be here for that meeting. You don't have to say anything you don't want to. You can stop at any time. Is that clear?" "Yes." He looked at her for a second, the way he had last night. The look that was trying not to look too directly, and then he nodded once and turned to go. "Victor." He stopped. "Thank you for the boxes." "Don't thank me for the boxes. I'm going to thank you for the boxes." The corner of his mouth did the thing again. He left. The front door closed. A car started up in the driveway and pulled away. Rosa put another slice of French toast on Lena's plate without asking. Corinne arrived at 10 exactly, and they worked until noon in the study. Corinne asked more questions. She was gentler today, in a way that Lena understood was deliberate. She had been doing the hard surgery yesterday and was letting the wound rest a little today. They talked about the timeline of the worst incidents. They talked about what the police would ask. Corinne wrote things down. When they were finished, Corinne closed the folio and set it aside, and she looked at Lena with her head slightly tilted. "How are you sleeping?" "All right, considering." The bruises. Healing. He's been calling my office since 7 this morning. Lena's stomach dropped. Derek? His lawyer. They're trying to get ahead of the charges, offering to make it go away quietly. A settlement, a non-disclosure, you leave the city, everybody moves on. How much? $200,000 and a one-bedroom apartment in Phoenix. It's insulting. I wasn't going to mention it, except that you should know these offers exist. So when Derek tries to run something past you directly, and he will, at some point, he'll try, you'll recognize what's happening. Is he going to come here? No, he's not that stupid. He knows what's on the other side of the door. He's going to come at you through other people. Your sister, probably, at some point. An old friend. Somebody from his side who'll call and say he's desperate, he's sorry, he's going to hurt himself. He just wants to talk once, for closure. That's the script. You don't have to take that call. You don't owe him closure. You don't owe him an explanation. You don't owe him anything. Hear me? I hear you. Corinne stood up. I'm going to get some air before the detective gets here. You want to come? They walked once around the block. The snow was powder light on the sidewalks. An old man was shoveling his front walk 2 houses down, working slowly, stopping to breathe. A dog on a leash sniffed at a mailbox and barked politely at them as they passed, and Corinne crouched down to scratch its ears, and Lena stood on the sidewalk with her hands in the pockets of her borrowed coat and looked at the brownstones lining the quiet street and thought about how strange it was to be walking around on a Tuesday morning not being afraid. Detective Imani Brooks arrived at 2. She was a tall black woman in her 40s, in a dark coat and practical boots, with a small silver cross at her throat and a face that had seen a lot. She came into the study with a notebook and a travel cup of coffee and a handshake that was neither too firm nor too soft. Corinne introduced them. Rosa brought a tray of coffee and tea and left them alone. Ms. Marlowe, Detective Brooks said, before we start, are you here of your own free will? Yes. Has anyone in this house told you what to say or pressured you in any way about anything that's happened to you? No. Do you understand that anything you tell me today is going to be part of an investigation and that I'm going to have to follow up on it regardless of whether you later change your mind? I understand. Okay. Detective Brooks opened her notebook. Tell me what happened, Lena told her. It took an hour and a half. Corinne interjected a few times with legal clarifications. Detective Brooks took notes without looking up, and when Lena got to the hard parts, the detective's pen slowed, and once Lena saw her jaw tighten, but her voice, when she asked her next question, was exactly as level as it had been before. When they were finished, Detective Brooks closed the notebook and set it in her lap. Ms. Marlowe, I'm going to be straight with you. The case I can build from what you've told me today is a good one. Between your statement, the medical records your lawyer is going to pull, and the witnesses from Saturday night at the Peninsula, we have enough to arrest and charge. Do I have your cooperation? Yes. Good. I need to ask you about Mr. Salvatore. Okay. You understand that his involvement in your situation is unusual, and that the department has an interest in understanding the nature of your relationship with him. Not to hurt you, to protect the case. If it comes out in court that you're romantically involved with a man like Victor Salvatore, the defense is going to use that. They'll say he orchestrated all of this. They'll say you're lying on his behalf. So I need to know, from you, today, what your relationship is. Lena opened her mouth and closed it. She looked at Corinne. Corinne's face was neutral. I met him 4 days ago, Lena said, at the gala on Saturday night. Before that, I'd never seen him. He knew about me because he'd been looking at Derek for a business reason, but he didn't know me personally. He brought me here that night because I didn't have anywhere else to go, and because he didn't think Derek would let me leave if I tried to go anywhere else. I'm staying here because it's safe. That's it. That's the relationship. You haven't been intimate with him. No. The word came out fast. She felt her face go warm. No. He kissed me once, in front of everyone at the gala, to make a point to Derek. That's it. Nothing else. Detective Brooks wrote something down. And his people. The ones staying at your sister's house. He arranged that for my sister's safety. I didn't ask for it. He offered. Why do you think he's doing this? For you. Lena was quiet for a long moment. She had been thinking about this question in different forms for 4 days. He told me, she said. His sister was in a situation like mine a long time ago, and they didn't get to her in time. I think that's most of it. I don't think there's a thing he wants from me that he's holding back. If there is, he hasn't shown it to me. He's been very clear about what this is and isn't. He told me the night I got here that if I wanted to be put on a plane to my sister's this morning, he'd put me on a plane. He said nothing to me since then that I'd call romantic. He's been a landlord and a protector and nothing else. That's what I can tell you. But simsam tishowus. Detective Brooks looked at her for a long moment. Then she nodded. Okay, that helps. The defense is still going to try to make something of it, but with what you've just told me and with your own statement, we can get ahead of it. One more thing. Mr. Salvatore has a file with us. I'm sure you've figured that out. Nothing's ever stuck, which tells you something about him and also something about the city. I'm not going to lie to you and say he's a choir boy. What I'll tell you is that as long as he keeps doing what he's doing, which is keeping you alive and cooperating with us, I don't have a problem with him this week. If that changes, you'll be the first to know. Thank you. Detective Brooks stood up. I'll be in touch tomorrow. In the meantime, stay inside. Don't answer numbers you don't know. If Derek shows up at this house, which I don't think he will, you call 911 first and then you call me. Not the other way around. She left. Corinne saw her out and came back to the study and sat down and blew out a long breath. That went as well as it was going to, she said. Brooks is good. You can trust her. Okay. How are you feeling? Like I just ran a marathon. Take a nap, eat something. Don't try to do anything else today. After Corinne left, Lena went upstairs and laid down on top of the duvet in her borrowed clothes, and she slept, dreamlessly, for almost 3 hours. She woke to gray winter evening light and voices in the kitchen downstairs. She could hear Victor's and Michael's, and one she didn't recognize. She got up, splashed water on her face, and went down. Victor was at the kitchen table in his shirt sleeves with a glass of whiskey in front of him and a folder open on the table. Michael was leaning against the counter. The third voice belonged to a tall, thin man in a dark suit who was standing by the window with his arms crossed, olive skin, gray at his temples, a face like a closed drawer. They all looked up when she came in. The tall man straightened and nodded at her without speaking. Lena, Victor said. This is Enzo. He handles, let's call it logistics, for the family. Enzo inclined his head. Ma'am. Hi. We're almost finished, Victor said. Sit, if you want, or go have dinner. Rosa made stew. It's in the pot. I'll sit for a minute. She poured herself a cup of coffee from the pot on the counter and sat at the far end of the table. Enzo shifted his weight. Whatever they'd been discussing, they'd stopped discussing when she walked in. She understood this. She didn't push. I'll finish up with you tomorrow, Enzo said to Victor. We'll look at the Lakeview thing when you have time. Good. Thanks, Enzo. Enzo nodded at Lena again and left. The front door closed behind him a moment later. Michael cleared his throat. I'll be in the front room if you need me. Then it was just the two of them at the big oak table, and Victor closed the folder and slid it to one side and took a slow sip of his whiskey. Long day, he said. For you or me? Both. Corinne said they're already trying to make it go away. Derek's side. They offered a settlement. I heard. You heard? Corinne called me after she left here. She's allowed to. You signed the paperwork this morning. Oh, right. He looked at her. You want to take the money? No. Okay. Do you think I should? No. Why not? Because if you take a settlement, he walks. He gets on with his life. He does this to the next woman. You know that as well as I do. You can do with your case whatever you want to do, but you asked what I thought, and I think the only version of this that ends with him not doing it again is the version where he goes to prison for a while. Detective Brooks thinks she has a case. Good. She does. She also asked me about you. I figured she would. I told her the truth, that we met 4 days ago, that nothing's going on between us, that you've been kind, that you let me stay here. He didn't say anything for a moment. He turned the whiskey glass in a slow quarter circle on the table. That's what I would have told her too, he said, if she'd asked me. Is it true? His eyes came up to hers. Is what true? That nothing's going on. The house was very quiet. The furnace ticked in the basement. Somewhere upstairs, a shutter moved in the wind. He looked at her for a long moment, and she looked back at him, and neither of them said anything for what felt like a long time. "Lena," he said, finally, "I'm going to be careful about how I answer that. Not because I don't want to answer it, because I do want to answer it, and that means I have to be careful." "Okay. If you asked me whether I have feelings about you, I'd say yes. I'd say I've had feelings about you since I watched you walk across that ballroom. I'd say those feelings have not gotten smaller in 4 days. That's the truth. You asked, and I'm not going to lie to you." Her heart was beating in her throat. She drank coffee so she'd have something to do with her hands. "But he said, the situation you're in right now is not a situation where anything is going to happen with those feelings. You have been in a very specific kind of hell for 2 years. What you need right now is somebody who doesn't want anything from you. That's what I'm trying to be. I'm going to keep being that. Whatever I feel or don't feel doesn't get to be part of the equation until you're standing on your own 2 feet, free of that man, with a life you're running. If that takes 6 months, I'll wait 6 months. If it takes 2 years, I'll wait 2 years. If it never happens, it never happens, and that's my problem, not yours." She was quiet. Her eyes were stinging. "You're telling me this now? You asked me now. You could have lied." "Yeah, I could have. I don't want to start that way. Whatever we are to each other, whatever we end up being, I'm not lying to you. That's the floor. Everything else we build has to sit on that." She put her cup down. She had to because her hand had started shaking again. He noticed. He didn't comment. "Okay," she said. "Okay. Can I think about it?" "Lena, you can do whatever you want. You don't owe me an answer. You don't owe me anything. I just said what I said because you asked, and I'm not going to have something between us that's a question you don't know the answer to. Now you know the answer. That's all. You don't have to do anything with it." She nodded. She wiped her eyes with the heel of her hand. He got up and went to the counter and poured her a fresh cup of coffee and slid it in front of her without a word and sat back down in his chair. "Eat something," he said. "You look like a ghost." "You said that last night." "It was true last night. It's still true tonight." She almost laughed. It came out as a short, wet sound that was half a sob. He didn't react to it, except that the corner of his mouth moved a little. Rosa came in from somewhere, brisk, set 2 bowls of stew on the table, handed them each a spoon, and left without speaking. They ate. For a while, neither of them said anything, and the silence was different from the silences of the last 4 days. It was the silence of 2 people eating dinner. The phone in Victor's pocket buzzed. He looked at it, frowned, put it face down on the table. "Derek." "No, one of my guys. He's been trying to find Derek all afternoon. Apparently Derek didn't show up at his office this morning. Didn't come home to the condo last night either. He's gone quiet." Her spoon paused halfway to her mouth. "Gone where?" "That's what we're trying to figure out. Don't panic. He's probably at a hotel somewhere, drunk, feeling sorry for himself. Men like him don't disappear. They go find somebody to tell them they're not the problem." "You think?" "I think, but we're going to find him. That's what Enzo was here about." She set the spoon down. Her appetite had gone. Victor saw it and didn't push. "Listen," he said. "Nothing has changed. The people around this house, the people around Maya's house are all still there. Nothing is going to happen tonight that's going to get anywhere near you. We're just going to find him faster than we planned to, because I don't like him moving and me not knowing where he's moved to. That's all." "Okay. Eat, please. You lose any more weight, Rosa's going to start crying." She ate slowly for Rosa. That night she couldn't sleep. She lay in the 4-poster bed and watched the shadows of branches move across the ceiling, and every time a car went by on Dickens, her stomach did a small lurch. At midnight, she gave up and went downstairs. Victor was in the study, fire going, low, lamp on, book open on his knee. He didn't look surprised to see her. He marked his place and closed the book. "Couldn't sleep." "No." "Tea or whiskey?" "Tea." He got up and went to the sideboard and poured hot water over a tea bag and handed her the cup. He sat down again. She sat in the other chair, tucked her feet up under herself, and held the tea. "What were you reading?" He turned the book so she could see the spine. "The Brothers Karamazov." "Heavy." "Always. I read a little bit every night. I've been on this one for about 6 months." "You like it?" "I love it. That doesn't mean I like it." She almost smiled. "What's the last book I read?" This is a question I'm asking myself, not you. Okay. I don't remember. Well, you read half a page of the novel on your nightstand this afternoon. You saw that? I saw the bookmark had moved. Rosa told me. Does she tell you everything? Only the things I need to know. It's the things she's good at. Lena sipped her tea. Victor. Yeah. What you said earlier in the kitchen. You don't have to. I'm not answering it. I don't know how to answer it yet. That's not what I'm doing. I'm just saying what you said. I heard it. I'm carrying it. I'm not going to pretend you didn't say it, and I'm not going to pretend it didn't land. That's what I wanted to say. He looked at her. His face was very quiet in the firelight. Thank you for telling me that. Okay. Go to bed, Lena. I can't. You can. Sit here for a few more minutes, then go to bed. You'll sleep. I'll stay up. The house is safe. She nodded. They sat in the firelight for 20 minutes without speaking, him with his book open but not reading, her with her tea going cold in her hands, and then she stood up and went to the doorway, and she stopped, and she turned. Victor. Yeah. Good night. Good night, Lena. She went upstairs. She slept. The days after that began to move differently. There was a rhythm to them that she had not had in 2 years. Mornings with Rosa in the kitchen, Corinne 2 or 3 times a week, Detective Brooks once. Long walks around the block with Michael a few steps behind her, pretending to mind his own business. She started to eat. She started to remember she had opinions about things. She called Maya every evening, and on the 3rd day, Maya drove into Lincoln Park, and they sat at the kitchen table for 2 hours, and Maya held her hand the whole time and didn't once say, "I told you so." She saw Victor at breakfast and sometimes at dinner. He was very careful with her. She noticed it, and she noticed that she noticed it. He did not touch her. He did not sit too close. He did not make jokes about the thing he'd said in the kitchen. He acted exactly like the man he'd promised to be, a landlord, a protector, a door that locked from the inside. And yet she watched him when he wasn't looking. She caught herself doing it, and she didn't stop. She liked the way he listened to other people, really listened, with his whole face. She liked the way he treated Rosa, which was the way a person should treat a person. She liked the way he drank his coffee, black, in a heavy cup, standing up, looking out the kitchen window. She liked the way he said her name. On the 8th day, Detective Brooks called at 8 in the morning. Lena was still in bed. Michael came upstairs and knocked on the door. "Ma'am?" "Lena, Brooks is on the phone. Victor says you should take it." She took it in her room, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Ms. Marlowe?" "Yes." "We found Mr. Hale." Her stomach dropped. "Where?" "A motel in Hammond. He'd been there the whole time. He's in custody. We arrested him about an hour ago on the assault charges. He's not going anywhere. I wanted you to hear it from me." "Oh." "He had a firearm on him, purchased 2 days ago, illegally. He had your new address written on a slip of paper in his wallet. I'm telling you that not to scare you, but so you understand why we moved when we did. He was getting ready to do something. Now he can't." "Thank you. He's going to be arraigned this afternoon. Your lawyer has the details. Ms. Marlowe, you did the right thing, coming to us." "Thank you, Detective." She hung up. She sat on the edge of the bed for a long time with the phone in her hand. Then she got up and went downstairs, and Victor was in the kitchen, and Rosa was at the stove, and Michael was by the back door on his own phone. Victor looked up and saw her face. "Brooks called." "Yes." "They got him." "Yes." He stood up. He didn't come toward her. He put his hands in his pockets. "Are you all right?" She opened her mouth. She closed it. Her knees went. Rosa crossed the kitchen in 3 steps and caught her under the elbow and guided her to a chair, and Lena sat down, and she put her hands over her face, and she began to cry. Not the quiet, manageable crying she'd been doing for a week. The other kind. The kind she had been holding in for 2 years. Rosa kept a hand on her shoulder, a steady warm pressure, and didn't say anything. Victor sat down in the chair across from her, at the same distance he always kept. He didn't reach for her. He didn't say it's okay. He just sat there, in the kitchen, at 8 in the morning, and let her cry until she was done. When she finished, Rosa put a clean handkerchief in her hand without a word. Lena wiped her face. Her throat was raw. Her eyes felt like they had sand in them. "He had a gun," she said. "I know." Brooks told me last night. You knew last night? I knew this morning before she called you, 10 minutes before. I was going to tell you when you came down. She looked at him. He looked tired. She hadn't noticed until now how tired he looked. Okay, she said. Okay. Victor. Yeah. I want to go for a walk. Outside, somewhere that isn't this block. He considered it. He nodded once. Get your coat. Michael drives. They ended up at the lakefront. Michael parked on a side street and stayed with the car, and Victor and Lena walked out to the path along the water. The wind off the lake was sharp. The snow had mostly melted in the last few days, and the path was wet. Runners went by them in bright gear and earbuds, barely noticing. Seagulls argued over something by the rocks. The city rose up behind them, tall and gray and indifferent. They walked for a long time without speaking. Lena's hands were in her pockets. Victor kept pace beside her. When I was 7, she said finally, my dad took Maya and me out here in the summer to fly a kite. Neither of us knew how. He didn't either, really. We ran up and down for an hour and got it maybe 20 feet off the ground, once, and then the string broke and the kite went out over the water and we watched it go. Maya cried. I didn't. I thought it was the best thing I'd ever seen. Victor didn't say anything. He was listening. I hadn't thought about that in a long time. I remembered it this morning. When I was on the phone with Brooks. I don't know why. I do. What? You remembered it because you were 7 years old in that memory, and you were happy. You've been looking for yourself at 7 for a long time. You just found a piece of her this morning. That's what's happening. She stopped walking. She looked at him. Victor. Yeah. When this is over, the case, the trial, whatever comes. Yeah. I'm not going to be able to answer the thing you said in the kitchen for a while. I don't know how long. Maybe a long time. I don't know who I am yet outside of what I just came out of. I don't know what I want. I don't know what I'm capable of wanting. Do you understand? Understand. But I'm asking you not to go anywhere. He looked at her for a long moment. The wind moved his hair a little. A gull cried over the rocks. I'm not going anywhere, he said. I told you that. I'm telling you again. She nodded. She started walking again. He walked beside her. They went another quarter-mile along the path, and then they turned around and came back, and Michael was waiting at the car. And the drive home was quiet, and the city slipped past the window in gray winter light. And Lena Marlowe, for the first time in 2 years, was not counting the minutes until something bad was going to happen. Derek Hale did not stay in custody. The arraignment was on a Tuesday afternoon, in a courtroom on California Avenue that smelled like old carpet and the nervous sweat of 100 people waiting for their names to be called. Corinne was there. Detective Brooks was there. Lena was not. Corinne had been firm about that. There's no reason for you to see him yet. We'll do the in-person part when we have to. Today is paperwork. Lena had sat in the kitchen with Rosa and cleaned out the refrigerator because her hands needed something to do. Corinne called at 4. Her voice was flat in a way Lena had learned to read. Bond. How much? 200,000. His lawyer posted it. He walked out of the building at 3:45. Lena sat down at the kitchen table. Rosa, at the stove, did not turn around but went very still. The judge set conditions, Corinne said. No contact with you. No contact with your sister. He has to stay in Cook County. He surrendered his passport. He has an ankle monitor. That is not nothing, Lena. He is not free. He is on a very short leash. The trial date is set for February 14th. That's 16 weeks out. He's out. He's out. On conditions. Okay, I need you to do something for me. I need you to not panic. Panicking is what he wants. He wants you scared and reactive. He's banking on 16 weeks of being alive in your head so that by the time we walk into court, you're a wreck. Don't give him that. Live your days, eat your food, do your work with me. When he violates the conditions, and he's going to violate them because he can't help himself, we're going to be ready. Does Victor know? I called him first, actually. I'm sorry, I called him 10 minutes before I called you because I wanted him to have time to add people to the street before I told you. He's on his way home now. Don't be angry with me. I'm not angry. Okay, good. I'll see you Thursday. Lena hung up. Rosa turned around from the stove. She had a wooden spoon in her hand, and she was holding it the way a soldier holds a rifle, without thinking about it. He's out. Lena said. I heard, honey. Victor's coming home. Good. Rosa went back to the stove. She stirred something, and she did not look at Lena, and she said, without any particular emphasis, I'm going to be in this kitchen for the rest of the afternoon. You want to sit? You sit. You want to talk? You talk. You want to do nothing? You do nothing. I'm not going anywhere. Lena stayed at the table. Rosa cooked. The afternoon slid past the windows in long blue shadows, and at a little after 5 the front door opened and Victor came into the kitchen still in his coat, and he stopped in the doorway and looked at her. You okay? I don't know. Fair. He shrugged out of his coat. He draped it over the back of a chair. He didn't come closer. He sat down across the table from her at his usual distance, and he put his hands flat on the wood. I've got 4 more people on the house tonight, he said. 2 on the block, 2 at your sister's. He's being watched. His lawyer's being watched. His brother in Naperville, who he sometimes runs to, is being watched. If he moves a block, I'll know. If he comes within 5 miles of you, I'll know before the ankle monitor does. Corinne said 16 weeks. I know. I don't know how to do 16 weeks of this. You do it one day at a time, same way you did the last week. That's a cliché. It's a cliché because it works. She almost smiled. She didn't quite make it. The first 2 weeks were the worst. Every car that passed the house at night made her sit up in bed. She started sleeping in the reading chair because the bed was too big and too soft, and she wanted her back against something. Rosa didn't comment, just started putting a blanket and a pillow on the chair every morning when she made the bed. On the 10th night, Lena heard footsteps on the landing outside her door at 2 in the morning, and her heart did the same thing it had done the first night, and she lay still and listened, and this time she realized, with a strange, slow certainty, that it was Victor. He walked the house at night. He had been doing it the whole time she'd been there. Every night he did a slow patrol, from the front door up to the second floor, past her door to the east window at the end of the hall, back down the other staircase. She'd just never been awake early enough to notice more than once. She did not stop him. She lay in the reading chair under a quilt and listened to his footsteps go past her door, and she knew he was not going to knock, and she wanted him to know, without saying it, that she heard him and that she was grateful. The next morning at breakfast she said, I heard you walking last night. He paused with his coffee halfway to his mouth. I'm sorry. I'll be quieter. No, I don't mind. I just wanted you to know. I heard you. He set his coffee down. He looked at her across the table. Okay. In the 3rd week, the calls started. They came from numbers she didn't recognize, blocked numbers from area codes in other states. She didn't answer any of them. She kept the phone face down on the nightstand. One of them left a voicemail. She didn't listen to it. She forwarded it to Corinne, who listened to it for her, and called her back 10 minutes later and said, in the flattest voice Lena had ever heard her use, I'm filing a motion tomorrow. Don't listen to that voicemail. Ever. What did he say? Lena. What did he say, Corinne? Corinne was quiet for a long second. He said he loves you. He said he's sorry. He said he's sitting in his car outside a church, which he isn't. We traced the number to Schaumburg. He's at his brother's. And he said if you don't call him back, he doesn't know what he's going to do to himself. It's the script. It's the script every one of these men runs. He's running it. You don't engage. That's all you do. You do not engage. Okay? I mean it, Lena. I know. I'm not going to. I just wanted to know. I'm sorry I told you. I'm not. She hung up. She sat on the edge of the reading chair and looked at the floor for a while. Then she got up and went downstairs. Victor was in the study. He was on the phone. When he saw her in the doorway, he said into the phone, I'll call you back, and hung up. He called me. I heard. Corinne called. I didn't pick up. I'm not going to. I needed to say it to somebody out loud. Come in. Sit. She sat. The fire was going. It was always going in that study in the afternoons now. She had come to associate it with being able to breathe. You want a drink? Victor said. No. Okay. Victor. Yeah. Tell me something about you that's not about any of this. He looked at her. What? Anything. Just, I have been living inside this one thing for 2 years, and then I moved into this house. And I've been living inside this other thing for 3 weeks, and I know nothing about you that isn't tied to Derek Hale. Tell me something that isn't. He thought about it. He rubbed the back of his neck. I cook, he said. You cook. Not well, but I like it. My mother taught me. I make a bad carbonara and a decent ossobuco and a lasagna that some people have cried over, though I think that's because of the day they were having and not the lasagna. Your mother taught you. She did. Where is she? Palermo. She moved back when I was 26. She lives 2 blocks from the house she grew up in. She calls me every Sunday at 7 a.m., her time. I have not missed a Sunday call in 9 years. That's the longest running commitment I've ever made to anything. What do you talk about? My nieces, the weather, what I ate that week. She doesn't ask me what I do for work. She hasn't asked me in 30 years. Does she know? She knows enough. She's not naive. She made her peace with my life a long time ago. She prays for me. I let her. It doesn't hurt. Who taught you to read Dostoevsky? A man named Father Calogero, at a school in Bensonhurst in the 80s. He was Sicilian, like my mother's people. He used to make the boys stay after school and read Russian novels, which did not improve our popularity with the other kids. He died a long time ago. I still have the copy of Crime and Punishment he gave me when I was 16. What did he write in it? Victor smiled, faintly, the first real smile she'd seen on him. It made his whole face different. He wrote, "For Victor, who will either be a very great man or a very bad one. Try to be great. I've thought about that a lot over the years." Which did you try for? He looked at the fire. He was quiet for a moment. Some days, he said, I tried for great. Some days I settled for bad. I wouldn't call it a clean record either way. Honest. It's the only way it's worth answering. She looked at him for a long time. The fire popped. Somewhere in the house, Rosa was running a vacuum, the sound of it distant and ordinary. Victor. Yeah. Thanks for telling me something. Anytime. In the 4th week, she started sleeping in the bed again. In the 5th week, Derek violated the conditions. It was a Sunday afternoon in early December. Lena and Maya were in Maya's kitchen in Oak Park, making soup together, and Maya's little boy, Jonah, who was 3, was sitting on the floor with a stack of wooden blocks and an expression of deep political concern. Michael was in the car at the end of the block. Tommy was in the car at the other end of the block. Everything was quiet and warm and smelled like onions and good bread. Lena's phone buzzed on the counter. She looked at it. It was Victor. He never called in the middle of the afternoon. She picked up. Yeah. Where are you? Maya's. You know that? Stay there. Don't leave. Don't go outside. Michael's going to come to the door in about 90 seconds and tell you the same thing I'm telling you now. Are you inside? Victor, you're scaring me. I'm sorry. Yes, I'm trying to. He ran. He cut the ankle monitor 40 minutes ago. The police didn't catch it for 30. He's gone. I'm on my way to you. Michael is going to get you into the basement. You stay down there until I get there. Put your sister down there too. And the baby. Is the baby with you? Yes. Do it now, Lena. Now. She hung up. Maya was watching her face, and whatever Maya saw made her drop the ladle into the soup pot and not notice. What? Maya said. Derek cut his monitor. Oh, God. Get Jonah. We need to go downstairs right now. Maya scooped Jonah up off the floor. Jonah, who had been about to argue for a different juice, took one look at his mother's face and stopped talking. The front door opened. Michael came in without knocking. He did not run. He moved fast and calm, the way he moved when he was working. Basement. Now. Go, Maya. They went. Maya's basement was finished, warm, with a TV and a couch and a small bathroom and a window well with iron bars over the glass. Michael came down with them and swept it in under 30 seconds. Closets, under the couch, behind the water heater, and then he stood at the bottom of the stairs with his body between them and the door, and he said, Stay on the couch. Don't come up. Don't answer the phone. Don't text anybody. Tommy's at the front door. There's 3 more cars on the way. Victor's 15 minutes out. Just sit. Maya sat down on the couch. She was holding Jonah tight, and Jonah, who was 3 and perceptive and quiet, put his face into her shoulder and did not cry. Lena sat down next to her. Her heart was hammering so hard she thought Maya must be able to hear it. Lena. Yeah. He's not going to get in here. I know. He's not. Michael, tell her. He's not getting in here, ma'am. Lena, look at me. He's not going to get in here. I know, Maya. I hear you. Maya took her hand. They sat there holding hands on the couch while Jonah breathed into his mother's neck, and Michael stood at the bottom of the stairs, and the furnace in the corner clicked on and off and on again. Time did a thing. Later, Lena would not be able to say whether they were down there for 10 minutes or an hour. At some point, she heard cars on the street. More than one. She heard voices upstairs. She heard Tommy's voice, and then another voice she didn't recognize, and then, finally, Victor's. Victor's voice low, speaking to Michael on the stairs. House is clear. Street is clear. 4 cars, 1 on each corner, 2 at the alley. Police ETA 8 minutes. They finally flagged the monitor. His brother's place in Naperville is being watched. Train stations, airports, rental cars, his mother's house in Iowa, all covered. He's not getting through any of it. Where are they? Basement, sitting, doing okay. I'm going down. He came down the stairs. He stopped at the bottom. He looked at the 3 of them on the couch, Maya with her son, Lena with Maya's hand in hers, and he took a breath. Maya, he said, I'm sorry this is happening in your house. Mr. Salvatore. Victor, please. Victor, is he coming here? I don't know yet. If I had to bet, I'd say no. I'd say he's running away, not running toward. He doesn't have money we know of. He doesn't have a car we know of. He cut the monitor at his brother's while the brother was out of the house. My people are at every place he'd go, but I'm not willing to bet your son on that, so we sit down here until we're sure. That's all. Okay. Jonah? Victor's voice went softer. Hey, buddy. My name's Victor. Is it all right if I say hi? Jonah lifted his face off Maya's shoulder. He looked at Victor. Victor stayed where he was, hands at his sides. Hi, Jonah said in a small voice. Hi, that's a good shirt. Is that a dinosaur on it? It's a T-Rex. A T-Rex. That's the best one. Yeah. I like T-Rexes too. Okay. Jonah went back into Maya's shoulder. Victor smiled, the small, real smile, and looked at Maya. He's a great kid. Thank you. We're going to sit here until the police get here and clear the block. Then you're all going to come back to my house for a few days. You, your husband, Jonah, until we have Derek. Is that all right with you? My husband's at work. Dominic's on his way to get him right now. He'll meet us at the house. Okay, thank you, Victor. You don't have to thank me. He looked at Lena. He didn't come closer. He didn't sit down. He leaned against the wall at the bottom of the stairs, and he kept his eyes on her, and he said, without saying it, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. You're okay. She looked back at him. She didn't say anything either. She didn't have to. Derek did not come to Maya's house. The police picked him up 3 hours later at a Greyhound station on Harrison Street with $600 in cash and a gym bag and a fresh ankle monitor scar and no plan beyond get out. They put him in a cell in a different building this time, and the judge revoked bond in a hearing the next morning that Lena did not attend. And this time Derek did not walk back out. He would not walk out again before the trial. That night, after Maya and her husband Tim and Jonah had been installed in the big guest suite on the 3rd floor of Victor's house, and Rosa had fed them, and Jonah had finally fallen asleep on Tim's chest on the couch in the den, Lena found herself in the kitchen at midnight with the lights off, drinking water from the tap, and looking out the window over the sink at the snow falling on the garden. She heard Victor come in behind her. She didn't turn around. You should sleep, he said. You first. Can't. Me either. He came to stand beside her at the sink, not touching, but close enough that she could feel the warmth coming off him through his shirt. He was still in the clothes he'd been wearing all day, rumpled, tie long gone, sleeves pushed up to his elbows. He looked like a man who had run a long way. He could have gotten to her, Lena said. To Maya. If you hadn't... He didn't. But he could have, Psych. He didn't. That's what matters tonight. The what-ifs are going to eat you alive if you let them. Don't let them. How do you not? He thought about it. He leaned his hip against the counter. You count the ones you saved, he said. You don't count the ones who got away. You pay for the ones who got away a different way, and you pay for them on your own time. Not when you're looking out a window at the people you kept alive. That sounds like a practice thing. It is a practice thing. Did you have a sister, Victor? He was quiet. Yes. What was her name? Kiara. What was she like? Funny. Smart. Argued with everyone, including me, especially me. She wanted to be a veterinarian. She was 3 years younger than me, and she was the person in the world I loved most, until I was about 25 and she got married, and then she was the person in the world I loved most and couldn't help. She was 23 when we buried her. She would have been 51 in March. I'm sorry. It's a long time ago. Doesn't mean it's not still there. No, it doesn't. They stood in the dark kitchen for a long time. Snow kept falling on the garden. Somewhere upstairs, a door clicked open and shut. Rosa making her rounds, probably, checking on the people in her house. Lena set the glass of water down on the counter. Victor. Yeah. I want to say something, and I want you to just let me say it. And then I want to go to bed. Okay. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know who I am outside of the last 2 years. I don't know what I'm going to want in 6 months or a year. But I know that tonight, when you came down those stairs, I was so relieved I thought I was going to be sick. I know that when you walk past my door at night, I sleep better. I know that when you tell me something true about yourself, it feels like somebody handing me a glass of water after I didn't know I was thirsty. I'm not saying this to answer the question you asked me in this kitchen 3 weeks ago. I'm not ready to answer it. I'm saying it because it's true. And I don't want to go to bed tonight without having said one true thing to you. He didn't move. His face was in shadow from the window. Okay, he said, very quiet. Okay. Thank you for telling me that. You're welcome. She reached out. She put her hand on his forearm. Only for a second. His skin was warm. She felt the small jump of his pulse under her palm. Then she took her hand back, and she walked past him out of the kitchen, and she went upstairs, and she got into the 4-poster bed, and she slept for 9 hours without waking up. The last stretch, from then to the trial, went faster. Maya and Tim and Jonah went home after 6 days. Derek stayed in custody. Corinne worked. Detective Brooks worked. A prosecutor named Ellison, a short bullet of a man who wore bow ties unironically, took the case and turned out to be exactly the kind of lawyer they needed, patient and methodical, the type who would bury you in paper and win the jury by making them feel like they were on a journey with him. He came to the house twice to prepare Lena for testimony. He asked her the hard questions over and over and over again, from slightly different angles each time, not because he doubted her, but because he wanted her to hear her own voice saying the true things until the true things no longer made her hands shake. Miss Marlowe, what did you do to provoke him? Nothing. Come on, you had to have done something. I didn't do anything. That's not going to be good enough for 12 people, Ms. Marlowe. Try again. What did you do? Nothing. Say it like you mean it. I didn't do anything? Again. I didn't do anything, Mr. Ellison. He hit me because he wanted to. That's it. That's the whole answer. I'm not going to give you a better one because there isn't one. Good. That's the voice. Use that voice on Tuesday. She used that voice on Tuesday. The trial lasted 4 days. Lena testified for 6 hours over 2 of those days. Maya testified. A doctor from an urgent care clinic who had seen Lena 11 months earlier testified, and the medical record she had kept in a locked drawer for exactly this reason was admitted into evidence. A woman Lena did not know, an ex-girlfriend of Derek's from before Lena, came forward at the last minute and testified that he had broken her nose in 2018 and she had never filed a report because she had been afraid. By the 4th day, the shape of the thing was so complete that even Derek's lawyer had stopped trying to reshape it. The jury came back in 3 hours. Guilty on the felony counts, guilty on the illegal firearm, guilty on the violation of bond. Sentencing was set for 6 weeks out. The recommendation, the prosecutor told her quietly in the hallway afterward, was going to be in the neighborhood of 12 years, and the judge, who did not like him, was probably going to take it. Lena walked out of the courthouse on California Avenue into a cold February afternoon with Corinne on one side and Maya on the other. Victor was waiting at the bottom of the steps, standing by the black sedan with his hands in his pockets, with Michael and Enzo on either side of him. She walked down the steps. Her knees held her. The city was loud and cold and ordinary around her. Somebody nearby was arguing about a parking ticket. A pigeon was eating a French fry off the sidewalk. She got to the bottom step. She stopped. Victor looked at her. You all right? She didn't answer him. She walked the last few feet, and she put her arms around him, and she put her face into the side of his neck, and she stood there. She didn't cry, she didn't speak. He was still for 1 second, like a man not sure what to do, and then his arms came up around her, careful, and he held her, and Michael and Enzo found interesting things to look at elsewhere, and Maya and Corinne gave her what distance they could on the steps of a county courthouse. And Lena Marlowe stood on a public sidewalk in Chicago in February and let a man she had known for 4 months hold her for the first time since the ballroom. And the hold was nothing like the one in the ballroom. "Let's go home," she said into his neck. "Yeah." "Victor." "Yeah. I want to go home." "I know." He let her go after a second. He opened the car door for her. She got in. He got in beside her this time, not across from her. Maya got in next to Corinne. The car pulled away from the courthouse and turned onto 26th Street and drove north through the city toward the house on Dickens Avenue. And somewhere, in a holding cell behind them, Derek Hale was sitting on a bench in County Orange waiting to be transferred to a place where he would sit for a long time. It was snowing again by the time they got home. The elms in the driveway were white. Rosa met them at the door with a pot of something on the stove and a fire already going in the study. Maya and Corinne came in and didn't stay long, just long enough for coffee and a quiet hug and the kind of goodbye that wasn't really goodbye. It was, "I'll see you tomorrow." When they were gone and the house was quiet, Lena went up to her room and took off the gray suit she'd worn to testify and put on jeans and the soft sweater Rosa had bought her on that first morning, and she went back downstairs, and Victor was in the study by the fire, and she sat in the chair across from him, and she said, "I think I might eat a whole pie tonight, out of the pan, with my hands." He looked at her. "Okay. I'm not even joking. I'm not saying you are. Do you have a pie?" "Rosa has a pie. I guarantee you Rosa has a pie. She's been waiting for today like a woman with a pie." He was right. There was an apple pie cooling on the counter, which Rosa had apparently started at 4 that morning and had said nothing about all day. Lena ate a quarter of it with a fork, standing at the counter, and then she sat down at the kitchen table and ate another quarter of it more slowly. And Victor sat across from her and had a slice, and they didn't talk about the trial, or Derek, or the next 4 months, or the question that had been sitting between them in the kitchen for 3 months. They talked about Jonah and whether he was going to grow up to be an engineer or a diplomat. They talked about Rosa's sister, who lived in Evanston and was apparently a monster at cards. They talked about a book Victor had finished the night before and wanted her to read. They sat in the warm kitchen with a half-eaten pie between them while the snow fell past the windows and the clock over the sink ticked and the house breathed around them. And somewhere, finally, a thing that had been held in for a long time began, very slowly and very quietly, to unwind. The pie got smaller. The snow kept falling. Somewhere around 9 that night, Lena fell asleep, sitting up in the chair by the fire in the study, her feet tucked under her, a book open on her lap that she hadn't actually read. And when Victor came in at 10 with 2 cups of tea, he stopped in the doorway and looked at her for a long moment, and then set the cups down on the sideboard without making any noise at all. He took the quilt off the back of the other chair and draped it over her. He did not wake her. He did not touch her face or her hair or her hand. He stood there for maybe 15 seconds, looking at her the way a man looks at weather he cannot control, and then he turned off the lamp by the door and walked out. She woke up in the chair at 2 in the morning with the fire down to embers and the quilt up to her chin, and she knew, with a slow, quiet certainty, who had put it there. The days after the trial were strange. She had been so braced for so long that when the bracing stopped, her body didn't know what to do with itself. She slept too much for a week. She cried for no reason, twice, standing in the kitchen with a glass of orange juice in her hand. She called Maya at odd hours just to hear her voice. She started going for walks by herself, without Michael 10 paces behind her, and she would get to the end of the block and stop and put her hand on a lamppost and breathe, because she could not remember the last time she had walked down a street alone. Corinne called her a month after sentencing, which came in at 13 years, and said, "You need a therapist. Here's 3 names. I'm not asking." Lena picked the second name, a woman named Dr. Marguerite Hahn, who had an office in a converted brownstone in Bucktown, and who, on their first meeting, looked at Lena across a small, quiet room with 2 chairs and a box of tissues between them, and said, "Before we start, I want to be clear. I'm not going to fix you. You're not broken. You survived something, and now you have to learn how to live as a person who survived something. That's not the same as being repaired. That's just the work. You okay with that?" Yes. Good. Let's begin. Lena went to Dr. Hahn every Tuesday at 11 for 2 years. She did not miss an appointment. In the spring, she got a job. It was small. A friend of Maya's knew a woman who ran a gallery on Damen, a small, serious place that showed emerging artists, and she was looking for someone to help curate a summer show. The pay was not a lot of money. Lena took it anyway. She stood in the gallery on her first morning in a pair of jeans and a white button-up that she had chosen herself. And she walked the rooms and looked at the walls and felt something she had not felt in 3 years, which was the very faint, small beginning of an opinion about what a painting should hang next to. By the end of the week, she was arguing with the owner about lighting. By the end of the month, she had rearranged the back room. The summer show went up in June and got reviewed favorably in the Reader, and the owner, a tough 60-year-old named Delphine, who did not hand out praise, brought her a coffee one morning and said, "You have an eye. I'm going to take advantage of this before you figure out what to charge me." Lena laughed. It was a real laugh from her belly, and Delphine looked at her like she was a fine specimen of something and said nothing else. She was still living in Victor's house. She had her own floor by then. The third floor, the whole third floor, which he had quietly had renovated in the weeks after the trial, was hers. Bedroom, sitting room, a little study with a desk under a window, her own small kitchenette. She could go days without seeing him if she wanted to. She did not want to. They had dinner together most nights in the big kitchen with Rosa, and sometimes Michael ate with them, and sometimes Enzo, and sometimes nobody, and sometimes just the two of them. Victor cooked on Sundays. He had not been lying about the lasagna. They had not kissed since the ballroom. She had been the one, in the end, who'd brought it up again. In June, after the summer show opened, they had walked back from the gallery together. Victor had come to the opening in a dark suit, standing quietly by the wine table and making conversation with an intensity that had clearly terrified half the collectors in the room, and they had walked back across the bridge over the river in the blue summer evening. And she had stopped in the middle of the bridge and put her hands on the railing and looked out at the water. "Victor, yeah, I want to talk about the thing, okay? In the kitchen, that you said. I remember. I'm ready to answer it. Part of it, not all of it." He waited. He was good at waiting. It was one of the things she had come to understand about him, one of the 100 small things she had collected over the months like pebbles in a pocket. He did not fill space. He did not push. He let a moment be as long as it needed to be. "I'm not ready to be married to anyone," she said. "I don't know when I will be. I don't know if I will be. I'm still figuring out how to be a person alone in a room. I'm not going to jump from one man to another. I won't do it to you, and I won't do it to me." "Okay. But I don't want to live with you as a landlord anymore." "Okay. I want to know what it feels like to choose you, slowly, with days in it where I might not choose you, and we deal with those days. I want to go on a date with you, a real one, where you pick me up at the gallery and take me to dinner, and I'm not in your house, I'm somewhere else, and it's Friday, and I have anxiety about what to wear, and you're nervous too, even though you'd never admit it. I want that. I want the part I never got." He looked at her. It was a long look. The light off the river was red gold on the side of his face. "Friday," he said. "Friday. What time does the gallery close?" 6. "I'll be there at 6:10. "Okay." "Lena." "Yeah. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Wait and see how the date goes." He laughed. She had never heard him laugh before. It was a short, surprised sound, and it changed his face entirely, and she stood on the bridge over the Chicago River in June and felt something open in her chest that had been closed so long she had stopped remembering it was a door. The first date was a disaster. He was there at 6:10. She was not ready. She had been in the back of the gallery dealing with a shipment from Brooklyn that had arrived in the wrong crate, and she came out with her hair in a messy knot and a streak of dust on her cheek and apologized for 30 seconds. And he said, "You look like you've been working." And she said, "I have been working." And he said, "I like the dust." And she laughed, and they went to a restaurant on Milwaukee that he had apparently booked 3 weeks in advance. And the restaurant had given their table away, and the maitre d' was deeply apologetic. But there was nothing to be done. And instead of being charming about it, Victor was very quiet in a way that Lena recognized as him being angry, and she watched him work through it, watched him make a small decision to not be that man, to not call somebody, to not make the maitre d's night harder than it already was. And he turned to her and said, "Pizza?" Pizza. There's a place on Grand I like, hole in the wall, 10-minute walk. Yes, they walked. They ate slices of sausage pizza standing up at a high counter by a window with paper plates, and she got grease on her shirt, and he got grease on his tie, and they talked about everything and nothing and about what exactly Jonah was going to be when he grew up. She had shifted her bet to astronaut. And at 9:30, when he walked her back to the house that was both of theirs, he stopped on the stone steps under the porch light and said, "I had a good time." "Me too. Can I see you next Friday?" "Yes." "Okay." "Okay." She went upstairs. He did not kiss her. She understood that he was not going to kiss her until she asked him to, because he had told her, a long time ago in a study by a fire, that the next thing he did that involved her, he would ask first, and he was not a man who forgot things he had said. She stood at her bedroom window on the 3rd floor and looked down at the garden and the bare summer trees, and she thought about what she wanted, carefully, slowly, with the kind of care that a person who has lost the habit of wanting things has to relearn. On the 4th date, she asked. They were in the kitchen of the house. It was almost midnight. They had been out to a movie and come home, and she had made tea. And they had been talking for an hour about something stupid, and then they had stopped talking, and the kitchen had gone quiet, and Lena had looked at him across the table and said, "Would you come over here, please?" He came over. She stood up. She stepped into his space, and she put her hand on the side of his jaw, the way he had put his hand on hers in the ballroom all those months ago, and she said, "I'm asking, now." "Okay. Okay." She kissed him. It was not the kiss in the ballroom. The kiss in the ballroom had been a flag, a statement, a thing done for 300 people. This was the other kind. It was slow and quiet, and nobody was watching, and it was for her, and when she pulled back, his eyes were closed, and his breath was a little uneven, and he took about 3 seconds to open his eyes again. "Okay," he said. "Okay. Do that again in a minute." "Yeah. After that, I'm going to tell you something, and you're going to want to sit down for it." "What?" "In a minute. Kiss first." She laughed. She kissed him again. When they pulled back the second time, he led her to the table and sat her down in her chair, and he sat in his, and he took a breath. "I'm getting out of the life, my work, the thing that is not coffee and real estate. I started the work a month ago. Enzo is taking over the pieces that can be handled clean. The pieces that can't be handled clean, I'm walking away from. I've been talking to lawyers. I've been talking to certain people. It's not a thing you do fast. It's going to take about 18 months. But it's happening. I wanted you to know before whatever this is goes any further." She looked at him. "Why?" "Because I'm 47 years old and I don't want to die in a parking garage. Because I spent 10 years telling myself I was a better man than the job. And I wasn't. The job was making me a worse man, and I could feel it happening, and I stopped being able to pretend I couldn't. Because the day Derek ran and I thought you might be in that basement when he got there, I was in the car going to Oak Park. And I made myself a promise that if you and your sister and that kid were still alive when I got to the house, I was going to find a way out. I was going to find a way to be a man who could be in the same room with a 3-year-old and not bring his job with him. That's why." "Victor." "Yeah. You don't have to do that for me. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it because I want to. I'm telling you because you should know. If I were doing it for you, it wouldn't hold. It would fall apart the first time you got angry at me about something unrelated. I'm doing it because I want a life I couldn't have with the job. That life might have you in it. It might not. Either way, I want it. Okay? Okay. Then okay. 18 months. 18 months. Longer maybe. Longer maybe. Lena. Yeah. I'm going to need you to know what I was before, not the details, the shape of it. I'm not going to lie to you later about what I did. If you want to know something, you ask. If you don't, you don't. But I'm not going to pretend the first 47 years didn't exist. I don't need details. Okay? I need to know you're going to keep telling me true things. That's what I need. I can do that. Then do that. They sat at the table for a long time that night. The 18 months were not easy. She had thought foolishly that the hard part was over. It was not over. The hard part was the middle. When Derek's appeal was denied and his letters started coming. Yes, he was writing her letters from prison, polite and calm, and therefore so much more unsettling than the voicemails had been, letters she did not open, and that Corinne filed in a drawer somewhere in case they were ever needed. The hard part was the nightmare she had in August that woke her up screaming so loud that Rosa came up 2 flights of stairs in her bathrobe, and Victor came up behind her, and Lena sat in the middle of her bed and could not stop shaking for 40 minutes. The hard part was the day in October when she lost her temper at Victor about something small, a schedule, a miscommunication, and the shape of her own anger scared her so badly that she left the house and walked for 3 hours in the cold without a phone. And Victor, when she came back, did not ask her where she had been. He just said, "You came back?" And she said yes, and he said okay. The hard part was her father, who had been dead for 9 years, showing up in a dream in January and sitting on the end of her bed and saying, "Lenny, I am so proud of you, but I am also so sorry," and her waking up at 3 a.m. and crying so quietly that even Rosa did not hear her. The hard part was realizing, 4 months into therapy, that she had been a person with a whole personality before Derek, and that the personality was still in there somewhere, and that getting her back was not going to be a reunion, it was going to be an introduction. The woman she was at 31 was not the woman she had been at 25. She had to meet herself. She had to find out what she liked now. It turned out she liked small galleries and long walks, and cooking, sometimes, and mystery novels, and Sunday dinners where nobody talked about anything important, and the particular quality of December light at 4 in the afternoon, and a man she was not yet ready to marry but who she knew. With a certainty she did not bother to examine too closely, she was not going to leave. Victor got out. Slowly, the way he had said. There were days when he came home from meetings looking like he had aged 5 years. There were days when the phone rang at 3 in the morning and he left the house, and she did not ask, and he came back before breakfast, and she did not ask. There was a night in April when he sat in the kitchen with a glass of whiskey and his hands pressed flat against the table and said, "2 men I have known for 30 years are never going to speak to me again. And they are right not to. That is the cost. I am paying it." And she sat with him until the whiskey was gone and did not offer a single word of comfort because she understood that what he needed was somebody to witness the cost, not somebody to tell him it would be all right. Enzo took over. The parts that could be wound down were wound down. A restaurant became just a restaurant. A small finance firm became just a small finance firm. The parts that could not be made clean were handed over to other people, carefully, with conditions, and Victor took losses on some of them that he did not explain. By the second winter after the trial, the name Salvatore still meant something in Chicago, but it meant something different. It meant a quiet man who sat on 2 charitable boards and owned a coffee roaster in Bridgeport, and had, rumor had it, not picked up a certain kind of phone call in over a year. In the spring of that second year, Lena moved into his bedroom. It was not a dramatic thing. She simply walked her toothbrush down from the 3rd floor one Tuesday night and put it in the glass next to his, and he saw it, and he did not say anything except, "Okay," and she said, "Okay," and that was the move. She kept her 3rd floor. She went up there to work and to be alone, and some nights to sleep when she needed to. He never once made her feel like she was not entitled to it. It was hers. It was going to stay hers. She married him in the summer of the 3rd year. It was a small wedding, 22 people, in the back garden of the house on Dickens. Maya was her maid of honor. Jonah, who was 6 by then, walked the rings down the garden path with the serious expression of a diplomat carrying a treaty. Rosa stood at the back and cried the whole time, quietly, into a handkerchief she refused to put away. Corinne came. Delphine from the gallery came, in a hat so large it required its own chair. A judge Lena had never met but whom Victor had known since they were both 19, performed the ceremony. Lena wore a dress that cost less than the shoes she had worn to the peninsula, and she chose it herself. And she looked in the mirror in the 3rd floor bedroom before she came down and thought, "There she is, there's the woman. Welcome back." The vows were short. She had written hers in a notebook at the gallery during a quiet afternoon, and she had revised them 4 times, and in the end she threw away the revised version and read the first one. "Victor, I didn't know you. I spent 20 minutes in a room with you, and my life ended and a new one started, and I didn't know which one I was standing in for a long time. I am standing in this one. I am choosing it. I am not the woman I was the night we met. You are not the man you were. We got here the long way, and most of the work was mine to do, and most of it was yours to do, and we did it. And the thing we have is not a rescue and not a fairy tale, and I don't want it to be either of those things. It's a life. It's the life. I choose it. I choose you. I'm going to keep choosing you, one morning at a time, for as long as we get to keep doing this. That's what I have to offer. It's everything I have. He cried. Not hard. A little. It was the only time anyone present had ever seen him cry. He reached up and wiped his eye with the side of his thumb and said, "When it was his turn, I watched you walk across a room once, and I have been walking across rooms toward you ever since. I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to do it for as long as you let me. That's it. That's what I've got." The judge married them. Rosa served the food. Somebody played records. Jonah fell asleep on a chair with a plate of cake on his lap around 10 o'clock, and Maya and Tim carried him upstairs and put him to bed in the guest room, and came back down, and the garden lights stayed on until 2 in the morning. Lena was 34 when she got pregnant, and 35 when the baby came. A girl. They named her Chiara Maya Salvatore. Chiara for the sister Victor had lost, and Maya for the sister Lena had almost lost, and Salvatore because it was Victor's name, and Lena had taken it when she married him, and it was hers now too. And it would be the baby's, and that was what that name meant now, not what it had meant before. The baby did not sleep. No baby does. But this one had an opinion about it, and for the first 3 months Lena operated on 2 hours of sleep at a time and forgot her own middle name twice. Victor changed more diapers than she had believed him capable of. He sat up with the baby at 3 in the morning with the baby on his chest, in the big chair in the bedroom by the window, and he read to her out of the Brothers Karamazov, which she could not understand and which he read to her anyway because he liked the rhythm of it, and he said her mother had liked the book too, which was not strictly true but which Lena allowed because she was too tired to argue. Rosa, who was 64 now and retired in theory, moved back into the house for 6 months to help, which they had not asked her to do and which she did not ask permission for. She just showed up with a suitcase. Lena cried when she saw her. Rosa said, "Oh, stop! You're leaking on the baby," and took the baby out of her arms and told her to go sleep. The baby was 8 months old the day Lena realized she was happy. It was not a remarkable day. It was a Wednesday in October. She was standing at the window over the kitchen sink rinsing a bottle. The baby was in the high chair behind her, mashing a piece of banana with the focused violence of somebody half her size. Victor was at the table, in reading glasses, going over something on his laptop for the coffee business. The sun was coming in through the window at the angle it did in October, that specific low honey-colored light that meant the year was turning. She was humming something she didn't know the name of. She had a cup of coffee cooling on the counter. Outside, a cardinal landed on the stone bench in the garden and did not fly away. She thought, "I am happy." She thought it with the same detached surprise she might have had noticing that it was raining. A small, quiet observation about the weather of her life. The thought came, and she turned it over, and she waited for the thought to be followed by the other thought, the one that had followed every good feeling for years. The thought that said, "This is going to end. You are going to pay for this. Something is going to happen." The thought did not come. She waited. It still did not come. She turned off the water and stood at the sink with her hands wet and her back to the room, and she let herself feel the thing that was in her chest, and the thing was not fear, and the thing was not dread, and the thing was not the careful small rationing of joy she had been doing for 5 years in case it ran out. The thing was just happiness, plain, ordinary, weekday happiness in a kitchen with a banana-covered baby and a husband in reading glasses and a cardinal on a bench. She set the bottle down. She turned around. Victor looked up from his laptop over the rim of his glasses. "What?" he said. "Nothing. You have a face." "Do I?" "You have a specific face. I know this face. I'm okay." "Okay." He went back to his laptop. The baby smacked the high chair. The cardinal on the bench was joined by a second cardinal, a female, and the two of them hopped together and flew off. Lena picked up her coffee. It was cold. She drank it anyway. Years later, when the baby was a 10-year-old with her father's eyes and her mother's mouth and an opinion about everything, and her little brother was 8 and talked so much that Rosa once joked you could run a generator off him, And Victor was 57 and his hair was gray at the temples, and he wore the reading glasses all the time now and pretended to be offended when Lena teased him about it. Lena would remember that Wednesday in October as the day she understood the thing. The thing was this: she had not been saved. Not really. Not in the way people said it about stories like hers, where a dark prince rides in and a woman gets rescued, and the credits roll. She had been chosen, yes. Victor had chosen her, across a ballroom, and that choice had changed the arc of her life, and she would be grateful for it until she died. But the choice had only ever been the beginning. The saving was something else. The saving had been her, every morning for 5 years, choosing to get out of a bed that was not the bed she had grown up in. Choosing to go to therapy on a Tuesday when it would have been easier to cancel. Choosing to go to work at a small gallery that did not pay enough. Choosing to hang a painting in a specific spot because she had an opinion about it and letting the opinion stand. Choosing to walk down a street by herself. Choosing to answer a question, slowly, in a kitchen, after thinking about it for 3 months. Choosing, every morning in a quiet house in Lincoln Park, the life she was building instead of the life that had been built for her. Victor had given her the door. He had given her the room behind it, and the time to live in it, and the patience to not rush her through it, and the promise, kept every single day, that the door behind her was going to stay locked. But the walking had been hers. That was the thing she had learned, and it was the thing she would tell Chiara one day when Chiara was old enough to ask about the story of the ballroom, and the silver dress, and the bruise on a shoulder blade, and a man who crossed a room. Chiara would ask. She would be the kind of girl who asked. And Lena would sit her down at the kitchen table, and she would tell her the truth, which was that somebody seeing you is not the same as somebody saving you. That the seeing is a gift. That the saving is a job. That the job is yours. And you do not put it down, ever, and you do not hand it to anybody else, no matter how much they love you. You let them help. You let them walk beside you. You let them put a quilt on you when you fall asleep in a chair. But you do the walking yourself, and you choose, every morning, the life you are living. And if you are very lucky, the way Lena had been lucky, you find someone who chooses it with you. That was what she would tell her daughter. On the last night of October, in the 7th year after the gala at the Peninsula, Lena stood at the window of the bedroom on the 2nd floor of the house on Dickens Avenue, and she watched the first snow of the season come down on the garden. The elms were bare. The stone bench was wet. Somewhere in the house, Chiara was arguing with her brother about a television show, and Rosa, who came over for dinner twice a week now and refused to stay the night no matter how many times she was asked, was laughing in the kitchen about something. Victor was downstairs making a pot of tea. She could hear him filling the kettle. She put her hand out the cold glass of the window. She looked at her reflection faintly in it, a woman of 38 in a sweater and jeans, tired around the eyes, with a small smile at the corner of her mouth that she had not put there on purpose. She did not count her bruises. She did not count anything. She was just there, at a window, in a house that was hers, in a life that was hers, watching the snow. Downstairs, the kettle began to whistle. "Lena!" Victor called up the stairs. "Tea. Coming," she said, and she went.